The regular meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, June 3rd, 2019 will be called to order at 7:02. Okay. At this time, would everyone willing and able please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance given by Alderman Savage, followed the prayer invocation given by Alderman Savage, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Thank you. Originally, I was going to ask for a moment of silence for being a week after Memorial Day, but I think, and that's still the case, but also I'd like to just ask for a moment of silence for the 12 municipal employees that we lost down in Virginia Beach. Thank you.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Here.
Alderwoman Tierney? Here. Alderman Payon?
Here.
Alderwoman Kendall Charles?
Here.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Present.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Here.
Alderman Savage?
Present.
Alderman Arnett?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Alderman Arnett.
I would like to move we approve the agenda, but I ask for some time at the end of the agenda so we can discuss the budget process for next Monday's council meeting.
Sure.
Second.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is petitions, reports, and communications, beginning with an update from the mayor.
Right. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. We are a strong city. Our residents are resilient. But we were put to the test a little less than a year ago when we suffered a mass shooting. Being a strong city doesn't stop our hearts from breaking for the people of Virginia Beach. To the people of Virginia Beach, I say this: Annapolis stands with you. Please find strength in our unity of purpose to end gun violence. To our Annapolis residents, for whom the murder of 12 people in their workplace, one state away, stirs painful memories, you are not alone in your grief and pain. We need to find a way to put an end to this. As a society, we need it to stop. I was going to take a moment of silence, but we just did that with Rob, so thank you, Alderman Savage, for that. Although we're nearly 2 weeks away after commissioning, I'd like to congratulate the United States Naval Academy, class of 2019. It is always exciting to see these young men and women mature as they go from plebe to commissioned officer. As part of our responsibility as the host city of the United States Naval Academy, it is our job to respond to emergencies, big and small. During commissioning week, our city comes together to celebrate, to prepare for the event. The Office of Emergency Management hold a briefing so that the police, fire, and all emergency responders will be ready should the need arise. Even when there isn't an emergency on the day of graduation, we as a city are called into action throughout commissioning week. Annapolis Fire Department Chief David Stokes reported that a number of people were treated for heat exposure, and we are lucky to have an emergency response team in place to provide medical assistance and emergency support where necessary. Thank you to the Annapolis Fire Department. We also had staff from the City of Annapolis Harbour Master Office out to ensure that the Blue Angels demonstration flyover went smoothly. Thank you to Beth Bayliss and Tyler Northfield for their work out on the water. Because of their prevention efforts, we had no maritime accidents. Also in May, I was very pleased to attend, along with a number of you, the swearing in of our new delegate, Shanika Henson. Get a little round of applause for that one. I know she'll do a great job, and we are lucky to have her in the legislature. Two events tied to City Dock Urban Land Institute work happened since our last convening. First was a visit from Charleston, South Carolina Mayor Joe Riley. He gave a great talk at Maryland Hall. If you haven't seen it, go to the city's YouTube page to check it out. His talk was inspiring, especially to those working on the City Dock Action Group and working teams. They are busy doing implementation work on the ULI study now. About half of the working team gave their first report to action groups last Thursday. I couldn't be more pleased to see the cooperation, collaboration and interest in this work. We all look forward to seeing it come together in a way that is actionable for the City of Annapolis residents and visitors. I continue to be impressed with Eileen Fogarty and the scores of volunteers who are helping with this effort. I want to thank you all and give you all a round of applause too. Our Department of Public Works got a wonderful note from an Eastport resident who said, I wanted to compliment the woman who operates the street sweeping equipment here in Eastport. She does an excellent job. She obviously wants to get the street clean, not just a quick pass by. Kudos to her for caring about the quality of her work. The person he is referring to is LaShawn Brown. She's an excellent employee of the city. Thank you for recognizing her work, and thank you, Ms. Brown, for being a standout employee of our city. And I'm going to give you a round of applause. The city got a little beautification upgrade when Baltimore Gas and Electric worked with two youth outreach programs, Black Wall Street Annapolis and Javanas Artista, in Ward 5, Mark's ward, to paint pad-mounted electrical equipment. My Office of Outreach and Community Service staff helped make this a great event. William Rowell and Adriana Lee got food and hosted a barbecue. Mark was on site to see the art improvements. The pilot project took place where students from middle and high school painted a Maryland flag, some Black-Eyed Susans, and other iconic Maryland images. And you know I love a mural, so thank you. I want you to have a look at it yourself. This is in the Saltaire neighborhood, right off of Hilltop, near the Pip Moyer Rec Center. Another couple of events the city hosted were Bike to Work Day at Market Space. We had a big turnout for that, reminding people to get out of their cars and choose a no carbon footprint transit alternative. That is one of my favorite ways to get around this city. A number of department transportation employees came out to celebrate that event. Thank you, John Corrin and the Bicycle Commission, for organizing. You will all be seeing the bike share lane arrows and sharrows on the city streets to help remind cars and cyclists to look out for each other. Recreation and Parks hosted Kids to Park Day. There was a big turnout with baseball games, fishing clinics, paddleboard lessons, and a bicycle workshop. I encourage you to get out at any of our wonderful recreation and park locations as the weather gets warmer. In fact, Truxton Pool just reopened for the season, and it's its last year of the old pool before demolition and reconstruction. My kids were there just the other day. I had an opportunity to visit Morris Blum Senior Housing with Alderman Fred Paone, where we met and talked with the resident council. I want to thank the residents for meeting with us. The Mayor's Office of Community Engagement hosted 6 Naptown anti-dope movement community engagement sessions at the Morris Blum Senior Center aimed at raising awareness about the opioid epidemic in the African American community. It is moving to hear stories of recovery, but it is also to give people hope that the city has resources available to help people who are struggling through addiction. I want to make sure Tola Ajayi from my office, who has been working these events from planning to follow through in all the wards of the city, gets credit for his hard work. Thank you, Tola, if you're out there, but you're probably watching on TV. Coming up, the Mayor's office will participate in a softball tournament against the Drug-Free All-Stars at Pip Moyer Rec Centre. That's 12 to 4 on June 22nd. Come cheer us on. I know our City Manager, Teresa Sutherland, has already been at the batting cages and is scouting reports that she's a real slugger. It's June and it's also Pride Month. Check out our social media page for events and activities happening around the city, including the Annapolis Pride Parade on June 29th at noon, coming down West Street. Also, at the end of the month, on June 27th, we'll be hosting a Safe Cities Summit, where people from around the country will come and talk about mass shootings and prevention strategies. I look forward to sharing more details with you at the next council meeting. Please set aside the date June 28th as we commemorate 1 year since the Capital Gazette tragedy. We will remember the victims, families and Capital employees and celebrate the freedom of the press. The Capital staff has received many recognitions and commendations in service of community journalism, including a Pulitzer Prize, which they picked up in New York last week. Let's hear it for those guys. And after the STEM gun violence that was occurring in our community, we held a press conference to talk about how neighbours can help police. On Friday, we hosted a community day with a cookout to bring residents of Harbour House and Robinwood together with police and resident councils. We want to put an end to gun violence in all parts of our city. And continuing on this theme, and why I'm wearing this shirt, is Mums Demand Action for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County is hosting a Wear Orange Day Summit this Saturday, June 8th at 1 p.m. The location is across from the Arundel Centre on Calvert Street. Please join me. Tomorrow night, there will be an open house here in Council Chambers to celebrate the 100th anniversary of women getting the vote. I invite you all to come out to acknowledge the accomplishments of women in elected office in our city. We'll have light food, displays, photographs. It's going to be great. So please come out tomorrow night at 4:30 to 6:30. Now let's get on with the rest of the council meeting. Does anybody have a report? Alderman Pindell Charles.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today, we had our monthly Public Safety Committee meeting, and our, excuse me, and our next meeting will be scheduled on Monday, July 1st at 6 p.m. here in Council Chambers. Also, I have presented to my council persons as well as the mayor, and I have some on the back table, the City of Annapolis Equal Protection Task Force African American Residents third quarterly report for January through March of 2019 as per Resolution 24-18. It's the third quarterly report, but the first and second quarterly reports are also attached. Thank you.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Housing and Human Welfare Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, June 5th at 3 p.m. We'll be discussing resolution being introduced tonight to require licensing and inspections of HUCA properties. And our Housing and Community Development Committee, that is a subcommittee of the Housing and Human Welfare Committee, is holding a public hearing here in City Hall on June 12th at 7 p.m. as a part of our requirements for analysis of impediments to fair housing, which we have to submit to HUD every year, where we identify what are the impediments to fair housing and what we're doing to affirmatively further fair housing choice. So we encourage everyone from the public to come out and speak so we can include that in our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. The Rules and City Government Committee will be meeting on Tuesday, July 11th, 4 o'clock here in Council Chambers. We'll be taking up several budget items that we didn't get to in the previous meeting, so it's open to the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is the required administrative submittals by the city manager.
Ms. Sutherland.
Thank you. There are two budget transfers to present to you. One is a $7,000 transfer in the Office of Finance from salaries to supplies to cover anticipated expenses for the rest of the year in supplies, and the other is $3,000 from finance to purchasing, both in the benefits area to cover the benefits for the remainder of fiscal year 2019 in the purchasing division.
Thank you. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is comments by the general public. During comments by the public may speak on any item that's not scheduled for public hearing tonight. Legislation that's scheduled for public hearing are CA 219, the City Manager Powers and Duties, CA 319, Office of Law, CA 419, Economic Development Program, CA 519, the Office of Emergency Management Department, CA 619, Department of the Environment.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a number of speakers lined up. So Art Savage is the first speaker. Please come forward, state your name and address, please.
It's on now. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to stand before you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Art Savage, and I have been a volunteer and skipper, as well as on the board of directors for the CRAB organization for 17 years. As a matter of fact, I was hired by the founder of the, not hired, but recruited by the founder, Don Backey, of the organization. I know that you have read and seen and absorbed many of the things that CRAB is about and what we're attempting to do, so I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm sort of going to take a little different approach because I want to call your attention to the opportunity that Annapolis has to once again put its foot forward in not only nationally but internationally. With the loss of the Sailing Hall of Fame, some think we took a step backwards and have lost some of that visibility that is so important to the citizens, the merchants, etc. With that being said, the project of the Annapolis Adaptive Boating Center gives Annapolis an opportunity to be exposed nationally, internationally, including Australia, I might add, for what we do as an outreach and as a support system and as a new way of life for those who are physically and intellectually challenged. This is not, let's go fun, let's have some fun on the bay kind of an investment that Annapolis would be behind. The city of Annapolis would benefit through the exposure we would get through this adaptive boating center by bringing people, not only our own citizens, which include those who are physically and intellectually challenged, regardless of race, regardless of income, regardless. If they want an experience and we provide that experience to not only teach them how to sail and also how to be safe on the water, but give them a life-changing experience. And this would give us an opportunity in the city of Annapolis to host things like international sailing competition for the disabled, bringing many, many tourists and visitors to the city. It would also give us an opportunity to link up with people like the Special Olympics, the International Olympics, because there are sailing venues in all of those organizations. All we need is your joining in with us and with the others to establish an adaptive boating center in Annapolis. And after 3 or 4 years of hard work, we're just about there. And this is something that all will benefit from, not just the handicapped. And I'll close because I know that others here would like to speak. I want to give you a personal experience, just to give you a little bit of insight as to what can happen. I was skippering one Sunday for Crab, and our guests were the Maryland School for the Blind out of Baltimore. All of these youngsters were either blind or multiple handicap. Today, it's just not blind. As I got ready to take one of our boats out, a young man, teenager, came to me, and he was totally blind. He came and was ready to get on my boat. I said, "Come on, let's go." And he got on the boat, and with a caregiver, as we always do, because we want to make sure that safety is first, we went out of the channel at Sandy Point, and I said to him, "Have you ever been on a sailboat before?" And he said, "No." I said, would you like to learn how to sail?" And he said, "Absolutely." And remember, this is a 16-year-old, happened to be an African-American young man who probably would never have been on a sailboat in his life. I said, "Well, here we go." And then I said to him, "Now, which way's the wind blowing?" He said, "I don't know, I can't see." I said, "All you have to do is touch the left side of your face, and it's facing the wind." He said, "Yeah, that's right." And then I said, "Okay, now let's look at the other side of your face." And he faced the other way, and he knew the wind was coming from there. So I put his hand on the tiller, that's the steering wheel, and I said, "Okay, you're gonna sail." And off he went, and all I did was just give him an instruction that said, "Which way's the wind coming from?" And he said, "It's over here." And so he turned the boat, and over there we went, and vice versa, and the other way, and for the other way as well. My point is, when we got back to the dock, I saw this young man with a smile on his face from ear to ear. It was the most thrilling thing I have ever experienced in all the years, and that's 40 years of sailing and 17 years with Crab. You can, with your support and your endorsement and your money, can take part in this. And the return on the investment, you will never be, you don't have to worry about return on investment and what happens if. We have a track record. We've been successful, and we ask you to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. David Frankel is next up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm also here to talk about the Fort William acquisition on Benby Road by Crab. I love the idea of helping folks get acquainted with sailing, and I predict that the slips used in this project, and I believe they plan on 17, will generate more traffic than any slips located anywhere else in the city. So I have a question. Has any traffic study been prepared prior to going ahead with this project? I'm going to guess no, because I haven't seen that. But it should be done, and I would hope that the increase in traffic gets counted against any new housing projects that would go in that area. That area is at the very far side of Bayside, another name for Ward 7. And I don't know if any of the council members have been down there recently. It's dangerous because there are no sidewalks. And if we're going to have folks from Crab using the area, there's a lot of views in the area that are attractive, and I would encourage you to do some planning and make sure that sidewalks are put in advance so that the area is accessible safely. It's dangerous also to people who live there, because when you try and cross the street, you have to watch out for traffic that speeds. So the marina could become a cash cow by itself if we could station a police officer there on a sustained basis with a radar gun. That would help a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, one last thing. I do want to support Mayor Buckley's approach to having the city help with the financing, but don't own the marina. The city doesn't need to become another landlord of a facility. I think we learned a lesson from the Market House. We don't need to own a marina and become a marina operator also. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Dewan Gay.
Hello, Dewan Gay, 409 Hilltop Lane, Annapolis, Maryland, 21403. Mayor Buckley, members of the council, I thank you for allowing me to speak before you today. Just before Memorial Day weekend, Mayor Buckley, Acting Police Chief Herman, members of both administrations, and the council attended a press conference held in Eastport Terrace and Harbor House Community Center. When asked what the change the administration and the police department would take to halt the progress of violent crimes in our communities, the chief responded by saying they plan to increase the presence of officers in our communities and increase traffic stops around the community. I immediately asked, would that harm the positive relationships that we hoped to build within the community? A week later, what took place this past weekend in our community was completely unacceptable and showed a lack of preparation, empathy, and leadership by most officers on the scene. In an already hostile environment, an officer allowed a verbal response from a male he was not even obtaining to enrage him to the point that he was willing to put not only his safety at risk, but the safety of the officers around him and the young man who he choked and beat unconscious. As his limp body lay on the ground and blood began to drip from the scratches and bruises on his face, officers did not rush to his aid to make sure that he was breathing okay or to check his injuries. Instead, they cuffed him and sat him in the middle of the street as if this was an example of what to expect if citizens retaliated. At this point, officers with guns drawn and tasers pointed at kids, mothers, and neighbors screaming for reassurance from their battered friend was unacceptable. I explained to the Public Safety Committee prior to this meeting what we seen reminded me of something from the Ferguson situation or the Freddie Gray riot. It was unacceptable. There were a number of officers who were being very aggressive with individuals who had no idea why they were being arrested. As someone who was physically there and as someone who has reviewed the video multiple times, the video of the action and post, I urge the council to immediately call for an investigation. I urge the council to question the chief of police and the tactics that you guys, not all of you, only a few of you were at the meeting, accepted and stood behind him for. If they do hope to increase presence, get them out of the car, get them walking, get them talking, engaging with the community, not beating young African-American males for simply sitting outside. It's unacceptable, and I urge the council to take action. Thank you.
Next up, Guy Schaefer.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilmen and Council ladies. I'm Guy Schaefer. I live at Baywoods of Annapolis, located at 1701 Bayfront Drive, Annapolis, Maryland. I'm a member of the resident of Baywoods Board of Directors, and I'm speaking tonight for the 200 members of Baywoods who are all voters and are all about 30% of the people at Baywoods are sailors, and we would love to see crab move to that area. Our residents use crab now. In fact, we're going over to Sandy Point this Thursday, a number of them, to do sailing with crab. However, it imposes a lengthy bus trip for our handicapped residents, and moving it to its new location will certainly improve access from Baywoods, but also for the two Title VIII housing communities at the end of Edgewood Road, for the new assisted living that is being built at the end of Edgewood Road, and ultimately for the residents of Providence Point, villages of Providence Point when it's completed. Clearly, all of these people who are elderly and continue to want to sail but have problems in being able to do so are going to benefit by the movement of crab from Sandy Point Park to Bemby Beach Road. In addition, Bemby Beach Road and the city have benefited by the arrangement that already exists between the city and the Annapolis Maritime Museum. Having another well-organized, sustaining organization will add to the well-maintained area of Edgewood Road and that area. Crab intends to expand its youth sailing program as part of its relocation. This will offer an opportunity for our disadvantaged youth, which are being handled by the Annapolis Maritime Museum Summer Camp, to join with CRAB and getting an opportunity for these young people to do more sailing. The result is an improvement for the services of Annapolis residents who are both handicapped and disadvantaged. Most importantly, and this is very important to understand, at a recent kickoff meeting related to the development of the new Annapolis Strategic Plan, it was repeatedly stated that Annapolis must develop attractions and facilities that will provide products and services that will be used by customers living away from the city. CRAB, by its very name, Chesapeake Region, is doing just that. It attracts repeat users. I have been involved in the Wounded Warrior area of CRAB for a number of years, and we have Wounded Warriors coming back from Florida and all over the United States to come back and sail with CRAB. They are not here for one afternoon. They are here for 2 or 3 days. They're spending money in Annapolis. They're buying boating products, and they are definitely adding to the economic benefit of Annapolis. In summary, if the resolution is approved, Annapolis will gain further recognition, as you've already heard, as a caring, environmentally sensitive, people-oriented city, one that uses its resources for the benefit of many who need it and deserve it. It will be a positive addition to the city, its residents, its reputation, and its overall economy. The Baywoods residents, all 200, urge a vote in favor of this effort. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Gerard Ferrari. Ferrari.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor, and our illustrious residents. I'm Gerard Ferry, an entrepreneur, television producer, and executive here in Annapolis. And I just wanted to alert the council, the mayor, of course, and the city and the residents. We have some exciting things that have recently happened here. I've created the America's Mock Election, where kids across the country, we have 4.5 million teachers, 52 million kids, and on Discovery Education, we host a nonpartisan celebration of democracy. We did it thanks to Mike Bush using his chambers. I actually had the mayor on to co-host the midterms with me. And what the offshoot of that, which I've been working on for the last 5 years, just was launched, is the American, everybody take out their phones for this, AmericanCivicEducation.org. That is an interactive kiosk that teaches youth, kids, anybody, believe it or not. I'm challenging everybody in this room and of course the council, go to that app, because we now have kiosks that are going in malls across the country and libraries. One is in the Annapolis Mall, right next to where Sears, Bowtie, GameStop, right in the center, where kids are hanging out, and they can take a quiz on the Constitution to learn civics for once, which our country needs overall. But if you go to American, then they say, well, do I have to go to a mall to engage? No, you can on your phone and your desktop as of the last month. This is everywhere. AmericanCivicEducation.org. I like to see everybody here take the quiz and see if you know the Constitution and know what this is all about, what you see every day in our country from the local all the way to the president. So Annapolis should be proud. I'm proud of being born and raised here and made my way back here after 10, 15 years. So tune in and go America. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Lance Henricks.
I'm Lance Henricks. I live at 912 Ravenshead Road in Sherwood Forest, and I'm here to speak on behalf of CRAB. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself very briefly. I'm a participant of CRAB since 2003, and I was on the board of directors. I'm the former president of the board of directors of CRAB. I have 3 kids, and I work for the federal government as an economist. I've been permanently disabled since 1982 from a spinal cord injury. And I've sailed with CRAB both recreationally racing, and also sailing with my friends and family. And it's a great way for me to get out and enjoy the bay. So crab serves an underrepresented part of our population. The disabled are typically poor. The fact that I work and have a good job is not typical. Most people who have a serious disability have a real problem getting by. That limits their options. For instance, and as another example of this, disabled kids can't participate in activities similar to able-bodied kids. So a disabled kid typically does not go biking, play basketball, baseball, tree climbing, camping, tennis, soccer, football, many other things. So I know that's a long list and it goes on, and this has a permanent effect on them. So I see how these activities are very important with my kids. They learn how to win, they learn how to lose, they learn how to work with other kids. This is not an option. So CRAB opens up doors that make that possible. Okay? I think this is a great opportunity for the city. So the city's staff report and fiscal impact report suggest that this problem is a risk to the city. And I will respectfully disagree with that. I think this is a great opportunity. CRAB has a very strong track record. It's over 25 years. The quality of the leadership and the board of directors is stellar. And there's a large base of supporters, both within the city and within the region. And when I say that, I mean volunteers, financial supporters, etc. The city would take ownership of the parcel under the proposal, as I understand it. And then for what is a significant amount of money that the city would be putting down, there is a much, much larger portion that is being matched by the state and by the county. And if the city took ownership, they would be putting down a much smaller amount than the value of the land. I think that's a pretty good deal. Okay? There are concerns raised in the report about being able to make sure that this is available to all disabled people, and also concerns about distinguishing between those disabled folks with unidentifiable disabilities and non-disabled people. So these are issues that CRAB has been dealing with for over 25 years. We've been operating at Sandy Point Park, which is a state facility. There have not been issues raised on this, not at all. So I think that those concerns are not issues that need to be wrestled with. And I think the validity behind those is respectfully not there. So my experience with CRAB, as I mentioned, is that I've gone out using the facilities and programs in many ways. For me, this is my sole opportunity to get on the bay. And I've seen how this program has changed people's lives. So when I see someone go out with CRAB, where they've never sailed before, and it opens up something similar to what Art was talking about, I think it changes their perspectives on themselves, their outlook, and their future opportunities. And that's really profound. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Alderman Savage?
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks, for coming out to testify. I just wanted to clarify one thing from you, or get something clarified from you.
Sure.
How many years did you say CRAB was at Sandy Point?
My understanding is that CRAB has been there for over 25 years.
Oh, okay. And have you ever received any kind of concerns from the state?
No. No. And when I was the president of the board of directors, we had an excellent relationship, not only with DNR, Department of Natural Resources, and also with the leadership of the park. And whenever they had an issue, whether it was people parking in the wrong place, in the spots reserved for the fireboat or something like that, or whatever, they told us, and we resolved the issues. And it was very collaborative, back and forth. So they supported us. They were happy that we were there. Unfortunately, the problem that we've got at Sandy Point is that there's a limited number of spaces for the boats, and getting in there, this is the busiest park in the state. Getting in there on a weekend day, which is prime time for sailing in the summer, is impossible. The line backs up on Route 50, the access road, and they start shutting down the park. They just say nobody else can get through. And they can't just pick and choose people to come through and skip the line because they're crowd participants.
And how many participants does Crab have on average on an annual basis?
I believe that the number is just shy of 1,000.
Okay.
And it's been that way for years. And Crab is looking to expand the program and bring in more people, both within the city and within the region.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that'd be too much of an impact on traffic, but
I would say that is not over the course of a summer, a huge number that's going to create traffic jams in the local streets.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Brad Latour is next up.
Good evening. Thank you to the mayor and the council. My name is Brad Latour, 3468 Monitor Court. I'm the current president of CRAB and have been for the last 2.5 years. And I thank you for the time tonight. The real stars are some of the people that you're hearing from, both our participants and our guests. Alderman Savage is correct. It's about 1,000 participants a year who we serve, and our goal this year is to hit 25 groups. We did 23 last year. So every year we're continuing to increase. I've been involved with CRAB since 2002, when a good friend of mine became paralyzed in a freak accident. So from that time, CRAB single-handedly gave him his life back, and I don't say that lightly. He was a very gregarious guy. He had no idea what to do next in his early 30s, and he found CRAB. I was one of his able-bodied sailors, and it literally resurrected his life. He now sails all over the country, lives full-time down in St. Petersburg, and it was just a remarkable transformation. And that was really Don Backey, the founder, and CRAB that did that. Fast forward to 2016, I was honored to be asked to serve on the board. I became president in 2017. In the last 5 years, as I like to tell my board of directors, we're the 30-year overnight success story. We have worked for almost 3 decades to get to where we are tonight, and I really want to thank you in advance and hope that you will vote in a positive nature for 2519. If you just stop and think about it, it would be a remarkable gem for this city, not just for Annapolis, but to have the state, the county, the city, and a committed organization putting an adaptive boating center in city limits so that we can all look to something to be super proud of. That's what I think we should really strive for tonight. One note I'd like to read, because we get so many wonderful compliments, I could never do it justice telling you this. It's from a therapist at the Annapolis Lodge. Not unlike the story that Art shared with you from the gentleman from the School of the Blind. This reads, "Thank you and all of your crew craft for providing several wonderful, delightful, and rejuvenating sailing experiences to persons served at Arundel Lodge and the staff that accompany them. One of our day clients stood at my door and just beamed. I mean beamed. Following the sailing adventure you provided to our clients struggling with severe mental health challenges. He said it was one of the best experiences of his life and he would never forget it. He was happy. One of our veterans who joined CRAB Sailing Regatta for Veterans returned to show me many pictures and saying it was a fabulous day for she and her child, and that she was so grateful to have been included. She said it inspired a craving to sail again, and she looked forward to joining her family sails on the Sundays. At Arundel Lodge, we believe that healing and therapy come in many different forms, and we want to thank you and all those at Crab who helped to make these experiences possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do. I wish you and yours many, many more days of sun and wind and great sailing weather as you spread the joy of sailing to all. Signed, a therapist at Arundel Lodge. I will leave it at that with an open invitation. In less than 2 weeks, we have one of our signature marquee events named after our founder, Don Backey. It's in cooperation with the Annapolis Yacht Club, where it's just our 6 adaptive boats racing against each other. It is a sight that will, if you've never seen us in action, you can come anywhere from 10 to 4 for 30 minutes to an hour. Come meet our participants, shake their hand. Your life will be changed forever. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just one question, if you come back up a second. Sorry. Alderwoman Tierney.
Hi, thank you very much for being here, and I want to thank you for providing your financial report. And I have to ask this just out of due diligence. When I look at the summary very briefly, there was a over 30% drop in, something must have happened. You have a 30% drop in income from 2017 to 2018. Could you explain what dynamic caused that?
Yeah, sure. There's really 2 things at work there. In 2017, we got our first public money ever. It was a $75,000 bond bill to replace our 25-year-old fleet. So that was a big chunk to the positive. And then, unfortunately, our accounting firm did not do any depreciation the year before, so this was a makeup year. So we had roughly $180,000 in net depreciation, which went against the revenue. The best metric to look at is cash and marketable securities, so over $250,000. So we can run the organization if we didn't take another dollar for roughly 9 months. And I will like to add, we have a full-time staff of 2. So we do all this, not because we have the most incredible 2 FTEs, which we do, because we have hundreds of committed, dedicated, loving, and committed volunteers. That's how it gets done.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
Next up is Amy. Amy, yeah. Didn't want to get it wrong. Thanks, Amy. Thank you. I know Amy. So.
Hi, my name is Amy Iannacone, and I live at 2008 Quay Village Court in Annapolis, Maryland, 21403. Thank you for this opportunity to address the City Council today. I am addressing you in hopes that I can share with you who a few of us are in this room that you might not know. We've heard some great things about the sailing community, and I just wanted to introduce some other members that you might not have met. So there's an exciting effort that's been going underway. A bunch of groups have kind of bonded together, people that are all interested in having access to the water. And I wanted to be here today to represent some of those groups. Those groups are the Annapolis Rowing Club, the Annapolis Junior Rowing Club, the Anne Arundel County Public School Athletic Department, the Irish Rowing Club, the Annapolis Dragon Boat Club, a bunch of independent kayakers and paddleboarders. And we formed a group about 3 years ago called PARC, which is the Paddling and Rowing Community. And that effort was to bring a bunch of groups together that all have a similar interest, which is to expand access to the water to folks that don't have it right now. So as you know, the county has more shoreline than any county in the vicinity. And only about 2 miles of that, of the 533 miles of waterfront, only about 2 miles are accessible to the public. So unless you're lucky enough to live on the water or have your own boat, it's very inaccessible to the average person. And so people have to either join clubs or become members of organizations that have access either to a marina or to a club to get to the water. A lot of people live in communities that have a marina at the end of their street, but they can't launch a boat from it because of whatever the ordinance is in their neighborhood. They can maybe see the water, but they can't get to it. So this is kind of a problem. And so I am a member of Annapolis Rowing Club. I've been a member for 18 years. We are a full volunteer organization, 501(c)(3). We've been around since about 1984, about 35 years. We started downtown Annapolis, and we used to share a facility with St. John's Boathouse, the college in their boathouse. And we served the Annapolis community for 25 years from that location. And then that program, the college wanted to expand, and they asked us, they gave us 4 years to find a new home. They liked having us there, but they wanted to expand their program. So we set out on an effort to find access, and took us 2 years. We worked through the government, and that was thwarted at the last minute. So we ended up at a marina, and we pay in excess of $5,000 a month, and we have no running water, no bathrooms, no, we have porta potties. We carry our 200-pound boats up and down the hill up and back for every row, and it's not ideal. So the programs that we provide are introductory programs for anyone who wants to learn, and we put about 80 people per season through that introductory program. We have then programs for novice rowers. We have programs for a special program for cancer survivors. That's an 8-week program. People come from such far distances for that. We have an adaptive rowing program that we work with individuals that come with a variety of different injuries, and we get them access to the water with safety equipment and launches, volunteers to carry the boats, et cetera, and row with them. So that's Annapolis. But in combination with all of these groups, what we're really trying to do is have a facility that would allow all of these groups to be under the same roof. And there is a great example of this in many other locations and other cities around this vicinity. We are the only county that does not have a community boathouse in the area. And I can happily send you links that would show you some fantastic examples of this at work that you would be really impressed with. So when people come to Annapolis, they think of this as this town with all this access to water, but really, people don't have easy access to the water. And so what we're trying to do is create a facility where people that, rowers, anybody that, paddlers, anybody, I know my time's up, but can be under the same roof and provide that to the community and also to tourists that come to town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amy. Alderman Fred Bailey.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Amy.
Excuse me.
Yes.
How do you think these groups would feel about using a remodeled, refurbished Tucker Street dock in West Annapolis? I have no idea if the residents, by the way, would encourage or discourage that. I'm just putting it out there at this point.
We would love to see it. I mean, we actually have had a meeting with the mayor at one point, just trying to get the message out there of what we're looking for. And we're open to looking at any facility that you have available. Because our current facility is literally about the size of what people put their lawnmowers in their backyard. It's pretty tiny. So we're looking for somewhere that we could get out of the weather, in the heat, and store our equipment and be inside when the weather's bad and things like that.
Well, I don't think there will be much down there in the way of
Okay.
Buildings, but it would certainly offer a quiet place. I mean, the Naval Academy crew is down in Weems Creek all the time.
Yeah.
I think
We actually
just something to
shared-
think about.
Oh, sure, yeah, we were on College Creek there for the first 25 years, and we shared that waterway with the Navy and worked well, had a lot of kind of shared resources there, like some of their coaches would come over and coach with us, et cetera. So
Okay.
we'd love to hear about it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. Is there an opportunity for your organizations and CRAB to come together to work?
We actually, I'm glad you asked that. We did actually, when we formed Park, CRAB was initially with us. And I think the only challenge there is that sailors like wind and rowers and paddlers generally don't. And so once we kind of realized that one challenge where, and I don't want to speak for the sailors, because I know, I don't want to speak for them, but I know that that was one of the challenges that came up. So when the county did an initial feasibility study, and they've already done the land studies, and there's already plans drawn up. They drew up some plans for quiet waters. They tested about 10 different sites in the county, and they came up with Quiet Waters and Bemby Beach as the two locations that they wanted to potentially develop. Bemby Beach was more appealing to the sailors because of its access to the bay, and Quiet Waters was more accessible to everyone else because it's protected waters that lead out to the South River instead of the bay. So that was kind of the challenge there, I think, that led to them not being a part of park anymore.
So is the county pursuing the Quiet Waters?
Yes, and so they identified Project Open Space funds, about $1.3 million that was hopefully going to go towards this effort. And so that's why a number of us are here, is to just introduce ourselves and make sure that everyone understands that, we understand sailing is king in this town. Everybody knows that, but there's a ton of other people that really want to have access to the water as well, and have a lot of programs that would encourage participation, especially for tourists that just come into town and want to see Annapolis. There's no facility right now that they can just come into town and do that. But all, like Alexandria, DC, Baltimore, they all have these facilities where you can just walk downtown, get on a paddleboard and cruise around and explore the city. And so we don't have anything like that here. And so that's ultimately, Anacostia has a boathouse that is a fantastic model of what can be done. They have 10 different organizations under one roof. They've got universities, they've got Capital Rowing Club, they have a number of different, like dragon boaters, they have kayakers. They have a bunch of different clubs, 10 different organizations, all working together under one roof. We just had a regatta there yesterday. They have adaptive rowing, events specifically for them, races for them, and it's fantastic. You walk in this facility and there's just all these boats there, and they all work together because they have a common interest, which is getting on the water. And so I would love to, I can share information with you about that. It's a great model of what can be done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you for your time.
Amy. Thank you. Next up's Michelle. State your full name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Betsy Tanzi. I live at 342 Broadview Lane, Annapolis, Maryland. 5 years ago, I was offered a job in Washington, D.C., and I changed my career and moved from Atlanta, Georgia to Annapolis. I spent a good 2 months trying to identify where I would live. I looked at every little town in Virginia and Maryland, and Annapolis, you had me at hello, right? I wanted to be on the water. I wanted to do sports on the water, and that's why I picked Annapolis. I could have gone anywhere around the DC area. 4 years ago, I took a Learn to Row class at Annapolis Rowing Club. They introduced me to a sport that I never had an opportunity to see in Atlanta. Atlanta's a landlocked city. I learned how to row with 8 other people in complete unison, getting our oars in at one time and getting our oars out at another. Today, I've taken the position of Vice President of Annapolis Rowing Club. And what that responsibility is that I run a Learn to Row program. I help make sure that Annapolis citizens and Arundel County citizens have an opportunity to learn how to row. Every year, as Amy mentioned, we host 80 folks. We get 8 people in a boat and a coxswain, and we get them working together as one community, getting their oars in the water and out together. When you get out of that water, the person behind you and the person in front of you becomes your best friend. You have an instant community. Every year at Learn to Row, we host a novice program. People of different backgrounds, different ages, We have teachers. We have mothers. We have fathers. We have empty nesters. We have cancer survivors. We have widows, widowers. We have everyone in this community. And every Learn to Row we host, we ask, why are you here? Why did you pick to come here? Because it sells out every year. I had to turn away a lot of people because we just don't have the capacity or the facility. And they all say, I want to be on the water. I want to be on the water, and this is my opportunity to get on the water. They also say they want to get a good workout. We give them that. But the extra benefit that sometimes they forget, and they all say when they walk away is they are part of a new community. So, I know you guys are considering appropriations and where you're going to spend your money, but I really ask you to think about all of those folks that want to get on the water. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Paul Bollinger.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, it's great to see you again. Always an honor and a pleasure. I'm here to provide some additional information for you in response to and follow up to some of CRAB's officers and guests who have spoken with you today. And we hope you had the opportunity to read the newspaper today and read the article about CRAB and the Adaptive Boating Center and the editorial supporting it from the Capitol. Again, minor correction, CRAB's been in business for 28 years, since 1991. We've never been in a stronger financial position. The thing that about CRAB is the money that's being appropriated by the county and would be by the city for program open space has to be used for acquisition. It can't be used for development. So we're talking about land acquisition here for a piece of property that we've worked with for 2 years to make available and is the right size for CRAB. It'll have about 20 slips. It'll have 24 parking spaces at all. So it's a very small but a perfect size for CRAB. As far as traffic, you're looking at 20 to 30 additional cars more or less a week coming down Edgewood Road to the facility. So that should be a very minor issue there compared to the traffic at Jabins or Port Annapolis Marina. Also, it was mentioned, and you were invited by President Latour to come to the Don Backey Memorial Crab Cup Regatta on June 15th at the Sailing Center at the Annapolis Yacht Club. I want to let you know that as our honored guest, we will have the Maryland Secretary of Disabilities, Carol Beatty, coming to join us, and she'll be formally presenting us with a proclamation from the governor declaring June in the state of Maryland as Adaptive Boating Month. We've included a copy of this proclamation in the package that we left with you, so you'll be able to take it home and read it. But the point being is, and I'll skip through all of the whereases and go to the last one, which is CRAB is seeking to create a premier adaptive boating center in Annapolis to expand its operations and greatly increase the number of special guests it serves without limitations on operations or boating. And that's indeed a very succinct summary of what we wish to do for the special guests who have special needs and are citizens of Annapolis, the county, and the state, and the region. And we thank you very much for the support many of you have expressed for CRAB and what we do, and we hope that support becomes commitment, and we have an adaptive boating center in Annapolis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderman Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bollinger, thank you very much for coming down here, and thank you much more for the work you've done with CRAB. It's a great organization, regardless of what happens here tonight. I've gotten 3 real questions from constituents of mine regarding this purchase, and I'm wondering if you can try to answer these as succinctly as you can so I can give a succinct answer to my constituents. The first one, I'm using the language I am on purpose, so how can we justify buying/running a marina when we just raised the property taxes substantially last year? The second one, and I'll repeat these if need be, why can't we make the project more accessible to more groups, particularly the rowing groups, that some of whom are represented here tonight? But, well, those are really the ones I have most in mind. And the third is, has DNR approved this use for Project Open Space money? I understand they have more or less final approval on the project. If not, why not? Or when would you expect that to happen, if it's going to happen?
All very good questions. I'll start with the last one first. DNR has stated to us that they will not approve the use of the program Open Space for the Adaptive Boating Center until the City of Annapolis has submitted an application for the use of the POS for the Adaptive Boating Center. So,
okay.
But we've spoken with Secretary Jeannie Hadaway Riccio, and she's very supportive of the Adaptive Boating Center and the use of the program Open Space money for it. The governor has put $1 million into it. So I think the secretary will ensure that DNR moves forward without stranding the state appropriation of $1 million.
All right, so we couldn't really wait until that happens, because that's not going to happen until we approve the project. Is that correct?
It's a step-by-step. The city council will need to approve ownership. Then the application for the POS would be submitted by the city to DNR.
Okay. Well, will that happen right after our vote, or do we have to go to settlement on the property?
If the city operates that quickly, I will bring champagne here for the next meeting. It's a process. I'm sure we'll be working hand in hand with the city.
That was a skeptical laugh.
I know. I'm sure we'll be working hand in hand with the city to write the application because we have all of the information.
Okay.
Answer to the issue of taxes and program Open Space money, apples and oranges.
Well, tell us about that as quickly as you
can.
can.
Program Open Space funds.
By the way, it doesn't mean I don't know about it, but there are a lot of people
but of
who
course.
don't.
But of course. Program Open Space is created by the 0.5% sales tax placed on real estate in the state of Maryland, that the money is then set aside for Program Open Space. So if you buy a home in Maryland, you're paying a 0.5% tax, it goes into that fund. DNR controls that money. The money then is allocated to the counties on a proportional basis in a formula around the state of Maryland. Anne Arundel County has a gentleman's agreement, there's nothing in writing, with the city, that they provide the city with approximately $250,000 to $300,000 a year. The city of Annapolis has $1.2 million because they've not spent the money for the last 4 to 5 years. And recognizing too that property in Annapolis is very expensive, so it takes more money to acquire something. So again, the tax dollars raised would not be going to this project, first off. And secondly, Program Open Space money is accumulating and is ready to be spent by the city.
What, is the city going to be running the marina, or do we stand, I mean, what's the downside? Are we going to be putting money into this thing, or what?
The city will not be running the marina. CRAB will have a lease with the city, similar to the Maritime Museum, for $1 a year. We will be responsible for all the operations, maintenance, and the insurance for the property. We will not be coming back to the city for any more money.
And if all that, the world turns upside down and that all fails, what the city has is for $250,000 of non-local limited local taxpayers' money. We have acquired probably a $1.5–2 million marina, something like that. Is that
$3.5 million.
okay? All right. What about the last question? Is why can't we make the project more accessible? I have to tell you, I'm fairly familiar with the marinas at the end of Bemby Beach Road. This one's got me. I can't. I'm not sure which one it is.
It's that small.
Well, and
you blink and you will miss it when you drive by.
I mean, I'm wondering why we can't, put a small pier, a launching facility for rowboats, for kayaks, things like that, as part of this deal.
There's no parking. There's only 24 spaces. We have 6 boats. We'll have 6 skippers. We'll have 6 crew, and then the remaining spaces go to the guests who are driving. There's no parking on the street on Bemby Beach Road.
Well, just as the use of this, as I understand it from what other people have said, will be perhaps mostly on the weekends. I'm not sure the paddling really operates that way. My impression is that that's frequently in evenings during the spring and summertime. I'm not sure they'd be there at the same time. I'm sure they would overlap, but at times, but not generally, I don't think.
I will reciprocate what the lady said from the rowers, that she couldn't speak to sailors, and I can't speak to rowers, except that my boat's at Pier 4 Marina on Spa Creek, and we have the Dragon Club there. And when they show up to go rowing, the entire marina is taken over by people, 24 to 20 people. And it's only a 34-slip marina. And so you have a limited amount of space. The rowers, when it was stated that we were working with the county to try to find a facility that would work for everyone, they were right. They wanted a facility that's as large as the Bemby Beach property, but they wanted a 20,000 square foot building on it, and for a rowing building, and that's impossible. And when we got down to the crux of it, and she correctly stated that when we were giving our presentation to County Executive Steve Shue, he listened to Park, and then he listened to Crab, and he looked at Rick Anthony, the Director of Parks and Recreation, and said, it's obvious, these two groups don't fit together operationally. Crab needs wind, wind creates waves, and they want to sail on the Chesapeake Bay. The rowers want protected water and smooth water, and they're not going to get that out of the Bemby Beach property. So at one time, the county was looking to buy the adjoining property to the marina, which is empty, and create a boat ramp and a boating facility for the kayakers there. The Bembys who own that property said they were not interested in selling. But the rowers came back and said, we don't want to operate out of there. So this concept of saying we need to work together, we're talking about different demands in water. And when the subject of a community boating center gets brought up, which is what they have in Newport, which is what they have in Miami, they went and they got a big marina, and then they made a part of it adaptive boating, and then they had the other boating there. Well, unless the city wants to buy Port Annapolis or Jabins, there's not a facility that would be suitable. And that's what the challenge would be. So we're talking really apples and oranges, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think the rowers' idea that they'd love to see a facility like Anacostia or the Alexandria Boathouse is wonderful, and we hope they get it someday. But the idea that Crab, that has worked for over 2 years to put this deal together, get $1 million from the state, 1.3 from the county, should now stop is a little troubling.
Mr. Bollinger, thank you very much. I don't generally ask questions of citizens that come in and testify during this open period that we have, but those are questions that I felt I needed to have answered, and you've done so very, very nicely. Thank you.
As a constituent of Alderman Arnett, I wish to express my appreciation for your questions.
You have my sympathy.
Alderman Finlayson?
Mr. Bollinger, I mentioned I had a few questions, and I think you've answered them, or at least a couple of them for me. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. As a former educator, I can appreciate addressing the needs and giving experiences to our young people and old who have disabilities and do not have normal access. So I want to be clear that I think it's a phenomenal program. I've been sitting in the seat for 12 years. We've lived through Isabel. We've owned a market house, a golf course, a rec center, and so they're still fresh on what you do to address another Isabel, as I said. So if we go through with this venture, will your organization assume all responsibility for rebuilding if another terrible storm comes along and wipes out your entire center?
Yes.
And that will be in the lease, I guess?
Sure.
Okay.
And we're going to be carrying insurance.
Okay. All right, because that is a serious concern that I have.
Right. The thing to remember, though, when they were talking about the docks being ripped up in Annapolis, those are fixed docks, okay? Yep.
Okay. And all
They
of
don't
yours are
move.
floating docks?
All of our docks are floating docks. I have my boat on a floating dock. We floated up with Isabel to 18 inches of the pilings, and then we floated back down.
So your docks were not destroyed by Isabel?
Not one board.
Okay.
I had pin oak leaves on my boat that were blown over from 4th Street, but the marina was perfectly fine. It flooded where the building was, but the marina just floated up, and then it floated back down. And our marina that we would construct would be in recognition of that 7-foot flood surge and be able to accommodate that. In fact, I think we should raise it higher. But yes.
So the city would have no liability for any?
None.
Okay. My last question has to do with use by others. Is it only for those with disabilities, or if someone else from the elementary school comes along and would like to take advantage of your program?
Well, a great question, because we're moving from Sandy Point to this adaptive boating center so we could expand our programs from Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays and weekends to 5 to 6, 7 days a week, and almost on-demand services. Because if we're located there, where we're not at Sandy Point State Park, our offices are on Defense Highway. We'll have in that building the facilities to have skippers who would be there and be able, if you called up and said, hey, I have a disabled niece who would like to come out and go sailing today, can I go? And we say, yes, we're ready to accommodate you, just like that. Now, from the elementary schools, what we do is we ask that they be from disadvantaged or at-risk neighborhoods, because when I got to Crab, we were hosting Howard County YMCA camp down here for 2 days, and they were charging the campers $250 to go to the camp and giving Crab nothing. And so the deal is can we expand our programs? Yes. We've got to get there. We've got to get our footprint down, you know, and get settled and start expanding the program. Some of the things that we picked up from Maryland Therapeutic Riding as an example. Great program. We're marketing together now, and they have therapists who walk with the horse and the patient. Well, we're going to reach out to the therapist and have them come and provide the therapy on our boats to their patients on a more direct, one-on-one basis where they're physiologically being challenged or experiencing other things like the wind and the waves. So if we can accommodate elementary schools, I don't see why we couldn't. It's great to get the children out on the water early as possible, particularly when they're living blocks away from the water and they're never getting on it. What we want to do is take the kids who come to our kids' sailing camps, get them scholarships to go to 2-week, 3-week, 4-week sailing programs in Annapolis or in the region. We're helping them there. And then what we want to be able to do is get them fixed up with other boaters in Annapolis to do the Wednesday night races and other regattas, so they're getting off of Crab's 22-foot sailboats and moving on to a 30-footer, a 40-footer. And we're working with the Universal Sailing Club, which is an African-American organization on the bay, to have them bring their personally owned boats to this marina, because we're going to put a T-head on it. Because how do we expand Crab's operations without a large capital expenditure in more boats, which nobody wants to invest in? As our president said, we had 21 organizations last year from all over the region come and sail with us. 21. We're going to have 25 this year. But that said, they'll be able to bring their boats, and we'll be able to board and disembark the guests, be they wounded warriors, be they children, onto these larger boats. And they'll see, this is what I really want to look at, and I'm really excited about it, is that you're having African Americans with these boats taking African American children out and showing them that they can learn how to sail and they can own these boats. This isn't.
Well, we're not going to go that far.
Okay, but I'm just saying.
We are talking about, but I understand your passion. One other question has come to mind now, and that has to do with your funding. How do you generate your funding? Do you charge anyone for your program, or how does that work?
Everyone can sail for free. It's not a membership organization, anything like that. All we ask are the organizations that come to us for what we call group sales. If they come more than once, then they should become a patron. And basically there's a fee of, it's rounded out of like $25 a person per sale, which is about 50% of what the cost is to do the program. Because we get organizations that come to us and say, we want to go sailing every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. You're part of our patient-client program, and many of these are getting substantial amounts of state funding for the care and treatment of these patients.
So the organization is a member of your organization?
They'd just be a patron.
Patron, okay.
But otherwise, if you come out and sail, you can make a donation. We won't decline it, but no, there's no charge. We get grants from organizations all around the country, predominantly this region. We get donations. We have people donating to CRAB from 40 states and 2 countries outside of the United States.
Thank you.
Alderman Pendle-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Bollinger. Going back to the point about partnership possibly with the rowing community, if I said to you, when you indicated the difficulty of the challenges that would bring, and if I said I was looking out in the audience and someone was going, not agreeing with you, what would your response be?
Well, I don't know at what point they were shaking their head on what comment.
About the kind of partnership the challenges you have, whether it be the parking or the space limitations?
Space limitations are a fact. That's hard to argue. They are what they are. As I said, we've got 23 to 24 parking spaces. And we have our fleet of 6 to 8 boats that guests will be coming out on and regularly sailing or power boating with Crab. We're going to offer adaptive canoeing, kayaking at Crab. So we'll have those programs for people with disabilities. The point being, though, is the Crab has 2 full-time staff, but we have 100 crew and skippers who are exceptionally well-trained to work with people with disabilities. We know how to board them, disembark them, how to work with them in the boats. And this is not something you just invite somebody to come down and go do because they want to. There is training behind all of that. I'm leaving tomorrow morning to go to Rochester, New York to represent Crab at Disabled Sports USA, and we are the only adaptive boating program speaking there.
You seem like a very innovative type person. Is there any way, any possible extreme way you could find Crab working with other partners, be it the rowing community or whatever? Is there any possible way?
I'll commit to you that we will sit down with the rowers and definitely talk to them about how something may be accommodated.
We have that in writing.
My words to stone.
All right. Sounds good to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I'm not just talking just the rowing community. I'm not a water person, but
we'll still
whatever
take
we
you
can
sailing.
use this. Say that again.
We'll still take you sailing.
Okay. Well, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that I'm not saying the more partners we can get, the better it will be. But if the more involvement from different communities, I think would be a plus in this endeavor.
Well, I wouldn't argue one iota with you. And when we're talking about Crab's program and where we're trying to take it from 1,000 guests to 2,000 to 3,000 in a postage stamp place, at some point you say, you're doing all you can there. You're getting maximum utilization. We didn't come to the city, county, and state and ask for something that was far larger than we could handle or accommodate.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
I'm not going to argue that.
All right.
It sounds rather biblical, so that
it is.
I'll agree with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try to keep this brief. Just a few questions, Mr. Bollinger. First of all, is there any access for your clients currently in the city or the county?
No, there is not.
That are fully ADA accessible and have all the provisions that you have?
No full ADA sites in the city.
Now, what about the county?
At Sandy Point State Park.
Just the one you're currently?
It's state-owned. There is no county-owned park that is ADA accessible.
Okay. So my other question, so there's an old building on the property, and I think you said you would need to adjust the piers that are there, and so you need to renovate the building. But you said you can't use program open space money to do that. You said that's only for acquisition, acquiring the property. So where would you get the money to make the improvements that you would need to make?
Well, in part, that's why we're seeking to have the city increase its share of program open space for the acquisition. Because we have the $1 million from the state, and we don't want to, and that can be used for development, and there's no matching requirement. So we need, right now, the county's provided $1.3 million, and we're looking for a higher share from the city so that we don't have to burn through that $1 million. And on top of that, we're initiating a capital campaign to raise $700,000.
Okay.
So it's going to be a substantial investment. And then on top of that, we'll go back to the state and apply for a waterway access grant that would pay for 50% of the cost of the floating docks. So we have to come up with the matching grant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, thank you.
All right, we're with you. Next up is Betsy Janessi. Hi.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you for your time. My name is Michelle Henschel, sitting in for Betsy here. In addition to being part of the Annapolis rowing community since 2004, my husband and I enjoy sailing, boating, kayaking, paddleboarding, pretty much anything that allows us to enjoy the waters. 6 years ago, when I retired from the military and relocated for my job, I relocated and became a member of Alexandria Community Rowing. Until then, I was completely aware of the stark contrast in accessibility, opportunities, resources for facilities and water access for master's and high school rowing programs, as well as the other paddling communities wishing to enjoy the waters. The Alexandria Community Boathouse and programs thrive because it combines two ideas. One, increasing community interest in the sport of rowing in a riverside town already known for it, and two, helping to raise money to support the city's scholastic crew programs by making membership in the local Crew Boosters Club mandatory for every member. A portion of every member's dues goes straight to the Boosters organization to support its efforts on behalf of the city school athletes. Unlike our small shed with no plumbing, no climate control, only enough electricity for a few lights and a small recharging station, and 2 rented porta potties that also double as changing rooms, we do the best we can with what we have. We're not afforded any grants. We're not provided any assistance from the state, the county, or the city for our programs. We don't have lawyers or politicians or lobbyists. We're just rowers. We're just a community. We're just people who want to enjoy the water. It's no wonder the T.C. Williams High School crew continues to be recognized as one of the top high school programs affording opportunities and scholarships that might not have ever been obtainable. Did you know that rowing scholarships are the #1 scholarship in the country for girls right now? We have a junior rowing club that can only accommodate 40 to 70 students when we have over 2,100 high school students in the county. Why are we behind Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Prince George's counties, and what we offer our youth for scholarships and opportunities? I share this with you because I realized that Alexandria Community Rowing was not unique. In fact, every other county in the region that has water access provides community boating and paddling programs. I realized that it is our county and our city that's unique and that we don't. I returned to Annapolis as soon as I was able to relocate my career because I love it here. It's my home. I can only hope to continue to bring attention to this disparity and opportunity and equitable access for the city of Annapolis. We invite you all to come out and join us. We'd love for you to come out and see our facilities, see what we do, and see the community that we serve. And we'd like to thank Alderman Rodriguez for being a former member of Annapolis Rowing Club, and we can hope you share the love for the sport and fitness and opportunity to be on the water with us. I thank you for your time.
Next up, Sarah Parker Hughes.
Good evening. Sorry, I've lost my voice. Mayor Buckley, Council, my name is Sarah Parker Hughes. I am a proud Annapolis resident of 20 years. I'm currently living at 1 Stewart Avenue, 21401. I'm here because I really believe very passionately about water access for all, not the privileged, for all. I am a product of having water access. I did not come from privilege. I grew up in Alexandria, where fortunately, in that community, there was a community boathouse for all. My parents could not afford to put me in a sailing club or a rowing club or a kayak club or get me a sup. But what they could do is allow me access to the community boathouse because it was there for the community, for the youth, right? And it defined my life. It absolutely 100% defined my life. It taught me to believe in myself. It taught me that I was strong. It taught me that I could do it. And because of that, I was allowed those scholarships, those opportunities to then compete at an international level, coming from not a wealthy family, I tell you, because there was a community boathouse. And I went on, and rowing has continued to define my life. When I moved here, the first club I joined was the Annapolis Rowing Club. I have since been very actively involved in trying to help support the youth program here. The youth program, the youth rowing program here is not accessible to all. It's not affordable. It's thousands and thousands of dollars. That is not for all. That is for the privileged. We can do better for our community. We live in Annapolis. This is water. We represent water, right? So I want to make sure that our youth have access to water. And the way that we do that is by funding a true community boathouse that is about rowers, that is about suppers, that is about kayakers, that is about sailors, that is about all, that is about adaptive programs. But we do that collectively, by collective resource, right? So I'm here representing rowing, but I'm representing water access and my passion for water access in this community. I came to Annapolis because of water. I am now privileged, and I'm fortunate to live near the water and to have access to the water because I pay for it as a member of the rowing community. But why can't we make it more affordable? Why can't we make it more accessible? Why does it have to be thousands and thousands of dollars for our youth? It shouldn't be. Water access should not be for the privileged in this community, and it currently is. Please, I urge you, Council, to consider funding that provides water access for all, especially our youth. Thank you.
Jennifer, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Balducci, and I live at 31 Glen Avenue, Annapolis, Maryland, 21401. I'm president of SOFO, South Forest Drive Business Association, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we are in support of O219, your legislative action for freestanding signs. And we also want to say that we're not in support of amendment number 2. We'd like to let businesses make the decision on whether they should be either pole signs or ground-based signs. And anybody who goes up and down Forest Drive can see that it's pretty much just Wild West there anyway. And so if you want to, say things as far as the kind of the size and the scope, which is already as part of that, that's our, we're not arguing that at all, but just whether it should be a pole versus a ground sign. And on a side note, if there's anything that you guys can do at any point about having property owners having to either remove broken signs on Forest Drive or fix them, it's one of my biggest pet peeves on Forest Drive. It's the, that whole theory about broken windows. You see a broken sign, it just sends a bad sign and perpetuates a lot of things that we're trying to avoid. So if there's anything that can be done about that in the future, we'd appreciate it. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't read this. Carl Black or Flack, would that be? Oh, sorry. I think that's me. Yeah, thank you. Paul. Okay, Paul. Sorry, buddy.
Problem with my hand, so it's
sorry, buddy.
I can't write very well. Paul Flack, 2594 Timber Cove, Annapolis, Maryland. I lived there for just over a year. About 2 years ago, my wife gave me a task, said, where in the world do you want to live? She said, you're retired, you're an engineer, and you're done. Where do you want to live? And so I looked, and I looked all over the place, and I said, I want to live in Annapolis because it's a charming place. It's near Washington, D.C. I love to paddle. I've been paddling since 1972. I just love paddling. I got into rowing later, and a lot of things. And one of the things I hear about water access, this is an interesting thing that you'd like to know. It's, as I did my search for a place to live, for a house, I looked at housing prices on the water versus off the water. And just across the street, it's $300. I made a spreadsheet of this, of course. You know, I'm an engineer, and that's what I do. So anyway, to have water access, it will cost you $350,000 to $600,000 just because you're on that side of the street instead of the other side of the street. And anyway, we decided we're not going to pay the extra amount to do that, and I found a nice place. But anyway, my history is I started paddling boats way back. I tried out for the Olympic team in 1984, kept paddling. I was on a lot of U.S. teams and stuff like that. I paddled all kinds of boats that there were. I know just about everything about paddling there is. And then I had kids, and then I got into rowing for some reason, turned around backwards, went backwards, and really got into rowing. And then when I came back here, then I did both. One of the things I asked Amy, I said, you know, where's the boathouse? You know, because I was up in Boston, and they have an incredible boathouse up there. And while I was up there for 14 years rowing, I became very involved in the process. About 15 years ago, they were exactly where Annapolis Rowing Club is now. They had a little shed. They had some boats. They were stacked out outside because there wasn't room inside. They were trying to develop all these programs, and they had people, but it just wasn't working without the boathouse. It was a logistical nightmare, but I did learn a lot by seeing that and watching the progress of actually finding land for a boathouse, siting it, all the considerations that go into it. You know, being an engineer, I kind of get nosy on these things, and you know, that's kind of my thing. But anyway, it's a very interesting process. And as I talked to Amy, I said, you know, you don't want to reinvent the wheel, because they've done it up there at Community Rowing. I was a member for those 14 years. I saw it from the siting to the boathouse, and when they got the boathouse and actually got it in place, all those programs that they were struggling to have just blossomed. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. So if you want to Google it, or if any of you want to talk to the people up there, I'll get in touch with them. It's a fantastic rowing program. Their mission is rowing for all. What we have in mind here, it's paddling and rowing for all, which is actually, it's one step further as far as I can see, because as you're talking about the disabled people, and some of the programs up there is military program and the disabled program, and then there's a junior program, and there's another program I can't remember. The underprivileged program. They're just all fantastic programs, but it was rowing for all, and that's basically their mission. It's like the best rowing club in the country as far as the rowing for all thing, because rowing tends to be an elitist sport. As you go along the Charles River, you know, you've got Harvard, and you've got MIT, and you've got Boston University, and those people could row, but nobody else could. And that's why this boathouse was put in, and it was started way back there. But anyway, they went from the shed and got the boathouse, and then all these programs blossomed. And why I say the paddling and rowing would be better is because a lot of the disabled people tend not to be able to use their legs. Like they might have one leg or no legs or a stump or something like that. And it really doesn't fit in with rowing, but paddling, it's perfect, because I've met some of these people at some of these disabled events, and they make my shoulders look tiny. You know, it's just, it's hard to believe. But I mean, their biceps are like this, and because that's how they get around. And and so the paddling part for many of those disabled would actually suit them better than this rowing for all. But the rowing for all was there, and the rowers had the money and they had the contacts and all that, and made it happen. But anyway, I just wanted to briefly read through
That's
what they've done on this, the programs, because that's really the programs that they did up in Boston are what they want to do down here with the with the park, the paddling and rowing community. So,
Paul, we're at 6 minutes already. So.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just
Thank you
list them
very
off.
much.
Is military and the disability and the underprivileged program and the junior program. And if you have any questions about this or want to have any more discussions about paddling and how it fits in and what needs to be done to make it functional and get all those programs going so it gives back to the community, I'll come out anytime you want or talk to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Next is Lisa Roth. Hey, how you doing?
I don't print very well. It's Ruth, R-U-T-H, sorry. So I'm Lisa Ruth, and I live at 4 Chelsea Court in Annapolis, Maryland, and 21403. I'm the owner of Brewster's Real Ice Cream on Forest Drive at 1409. I met Mark about 3 years ago. I've been in Annapolis, it'll be 4 years in June. I started managing Brewster's, and I talked to the owner at the time, and wanted to figure out why El Cabrito had a sign and we didn't. Mark and I figured out that our building was 80 feet wide instead of 100. And then there was a couple other regulations that he's figured out as well. But apparently there's an amendment number 2, which we would not be allowed to have a sign as well. So I'm here to stand against that amendment, and I would like to have that one removed. I don't know, do I need to go into what it is? But I'm proudly the owner of Brewster's now. After 2.5 hard years of work, I became the owner in December of 2017, and I would love to have a sign out front to let everyone know, and I would be able to create an extra parking space if I was able to get that sign. Because right now I have a van there. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Have a great one.
Thank you. Next up, Peter Holden.
Good evening. I'll be brief. I'm here to speak on behalf and support of CRAB's proposal and the resolution before you tonight. By way of background, I moved to Annapolis from Newport, Rhode Island, and on the way coming to Annapolis, I passed the Sailing Hall of Fame leaving Annapolis, which was too bad. But what is the point here tonight? It is to look at what the town of Annapolis can do to remedy their problem. What's their problem? Well, this is the sailing capital of the United States. And unfortunately, it's the sailing capital of the United States for about 8% of the population that can't participate in that sailing capital name. I've worked with nonprofit organizations for folks with disabilities all my professional career and got involved with CRAB, helped CRAB get some money from the legislature to buy some boats. But now we're stuck with a situation where there's no access, no accessibility. What does it say about the town of Annapolis, the sailing capital of the United States, that we're excluding, shutting out people with special needs, folks with disabilities, people that have visual handicaps, people with mental disabilities? They can't come out. Everybody's out there sailing around. Everybody's spending a lot of money on boats, except that accessible locations are not there for folks with disabilities or challenges. It's a sad commentary on our city. It can be remedied tonight with your support. I think it's, not unreasonable to have conformance with Americans with Disability Act for people living in Annapolis. This town has been filled with people since the good weather is here, and it's very easy to see that there's no accessibility for folks in Annapolis. That could be remedied, as I said, tonight. I want to ask Mayor Buckley for his support with his vision for Annapolis. Let's have our vision, your vision, include those with disabilities, include our sailing center that's been proposed. It can bring light, national light to this city. It's a good thing for everybody. There's goodwill here tonight, and I recommend and I support its passage. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to come up and speak? Please come forward now. State your name and address. How you doing?
Hi, guys. That was a lot of boats. I hope you guys don't jump ship on me or anything. No offense, I'm sorry. My name is Shamir Gladden. I live at 1135 Madison Street, apartment S2, Annapolis, Maryland, 21403. Sorry, I said that so fast and she's writing. I come to talk to you about something very important that I've had on my mind for a little while. It kind of started 2 weeks ago, but kind of ventured off into it had to be said. When I first came to Annapolis, I actually came from a shelter called Sarah's House, and it really sucked there. But when I got here, I was just so excited. But then I saw that there's a lot of things that need to change about my neighborhood. And so someone quickly reminded me that even though I live in the community, I'm not from the community. And I got offended, so yeah, I was indignant. But then reality struck and I said, wait a minute, I have to separate myself from what he said and actually apply my training from Leadership Academy in order to understand where they were coming from. And what I see is that by me going out and talking to different genres of people from Newtown 20, people from Bay Ridge Apartments, people from Robinwood, people from all over in different low-income houses, I see that we need a lot of help with funding for childcare in order for parents to take part of some of these programs that are being given to us, as far as CNA and GNA, the Sherwin-Williams Painting Project, and other classes that are funded and held through the community college. However, they can't access these classes because either they have no way of child care, or they don't have transportation, or they just feel like there's no way to tie it up, especially with younger children. So I don't know how we would do it. I guess we would have to go further in detail about figuring that out. But that's our biggest issue, is for parents to be able to have adequate child care. And I don't see too many facilities out here. And even though we have a recreation center on property, it's not being utilized until my daughter gets out of school. So maybe there could be a partnership between the city and Housing Authority and the college for like the kids that are going to college for, child care, that they can do their volunteer time to maybe help with learning how to care for the children, maybe some type of way for those parents to feel like, okay, we have a step up. Now I can sign up for those GED classes. Now I can sign up for the literacy program or ESOL or any type of career skills. I'm sorry, I'm so nervous, and I don't know why, because I see you guys all the time, but yet I get so nervous. But he was absolutely right. If I'm going to do something besides just go to meetings, I have to make some type of impact and change. And I see that that's a big thing, because there's a lot of young little children that have to be looked after. They're not in elementary or in pre-K. So I'm hoping that the city of Annapolis will maybe sit down with Anne Arundel Community College and also Housing Authority to probably look at how we can make that accommodation for those parents who were once just like me, because I mean, at least me, I was fortunate. I had my grandmother, God rest her soul, I had her to look after my daughter while I went to school. And now I have my uncle watching after my daughter while I go to work and go to my Leadership Academy in Eastport working together. But I'm fortunate, some others aren't. So I'm hoping that you guys will maybe make that an agenda that we can make an outreach to talk about one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for coming in, and you don't need to be nervous at all.
I'm always nervous.
Very eloquent. the thing about childcare is a trust factor. That's huge. When you entrust your child to someone else that you don't know, that's hard. And if you go into class and doing that, it's sometimes hard to concentrate. Like you said, you had your grandmother, I had my parents, and I had a set of folks that I had known all my life. So I trusted my children in their care. And so that's really, I won't call it an impediment, but that's a real challenge. So we're going to think about that, and we want ideas from other people to see how maybe we can do that, because that's extremely important. Someone wants to get their GED, their CNA, GNA, their CDL license. That's a step forward, but that childcare is a challenge. But we're all going to kind of put our heads together and see if we can't come up with something. But I'm going to put it out there to everybody in the city. We're looking for your suggestions on how we can handle that, because we're looking for people to move forward. But when you have that challenge, it's hard, and it comes down to trust. I've told so many parents, be careful who watches your children, because they will take away the good parts of the babysitter as well as the not so good parts of the babysitter.
And even if the housing authority was open to hiring, you know, staff members
Right.
to facilitate childcare for younger youth,
True.
they have rooms in there that are available for those children to do art projects. They have the gymnasium to do recreational.
The space is there,
Yeah,
of course.
the space
like you
is
said.
there.
It's just
but we just
finding-
need the funding for being able to pay
True.
for the person, as well as if they need extra help. That's where we would, you know, branch out to the college and say, hey, if someone wants to do their community hours in order for them to graduate for child care or a licensed child care provider, you know, they can, you know, either do it at the college or they can do it there, but at least they would have the opportunity to be able to learn. Even if we open it for the members of the community that want to go into childcare or want to start their own business one day, at least that would be an eye-opener, because they do have the program where they have volunteers. If they live on property, they can volunteer. And the only volunteering that we have basically is either you can go pick up trash or clean the building hallways, or you could go clean the office. And like, that's just not enough. Oh.
Setting up a child care establishment, because I've kind of sort of gone through that with some other people through the state regulations. It's extremely delicate, to say the least. So, and it has to be, if folks want to take advantage of these classes, it has to be, the child care has to be coordinated with what the college is doing. And it's like I said, trying to establish even a child care situation, an organization. The state health department is extraordinarily, I won't say picky, but it's for a reason. And I've seen a couple of people in my community attempt it, great intentions, but it just didn't work out, unfortunately. And they were good people, but it's just really, really hard. But we're gonna put it out there and see if we come back with some good suggestions. It's a great idea. I'm all for it, because it is hard. So we'll put it out there to the public, and we'll put our heads together. And we can start with HACA and see what they maybe propose to do and go from there. But that, you know, that's because Leadership Anne Arundel has projects for the different groups. I have not gone through it, I'm ashamed to say. But that might be something that one of the groups at Leadership Anne Arundel might want to pursue. How do we do that? Because Leadership Anne Arundel's groups have come up with a lot of great initiatives for our county. So that might be something as well that can be tackled. But I applaud you for coming before us, as always. Very insightful, great ideas. Let's see if we can make it happen.
There was one more thing, just a small thing.
That's fine.
So it was brought to my attention like yesterday that some of the residents had came to Hackett with the idea about a basketball tournament for all the neighborhoods in Housing Authority, but it was turned down. So maybe. We can talk about that offline? Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because
we would like to
we had
do
a meeting
something.
today with the director of Rec and Park, so that might be something we want to take on, but certainly store that in memory, and we're going to talk about it offline and see what, I don't want to bring up any details, whoever it was said it or however it was said, because I don't want to put it out there that it's not correct. So let's talk about how we can make that happen.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Alderwoman Tierney?
I know, I feel like it's already late, but I just want to say this. Sometimes you have the ingredients and you just don't know how to marry them together. And I do know from living in my ward that if you identify a need, there's so many generous people with their time. And while you were talking, I was just sort of daydreaming, about, some kind of, adopt a, like I was, the thought of grandparents driving might be scary, but some kind of marriage between retirees in Ward 1, my ward, and this need that you have, similar to some of my residents who take in pagers and sponsor mids and all that stuff. But heck, if I didn't have other stuff to do, I mean, the thought of driving somebody to school and taking care of their baby would be pretty cool. I just don't know the format and the legalities, if needed, of doing that. So Rhonda and I will talk more about that, right, Rhonda? Yes, we will. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. 6 minutes probably wouldn't be enough time, but.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shabir. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good night.
All right. Anybody else present like to come forward and speak?
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Scott Pugh. I'm from Louisiana. My wife's from Kentucky. We've lived in Annapolis since 2002. Live on Delwood Court in the Severn Grove part of Annapolis. I was a career submarine officer in the Navy, like Admiral Schaefer, Naval Academy graduate. I've supported the CRAB, Wounded Warrior Regatta program. Every spring and fall, CRAB conducts a Wounded Warrior Regatta where they bring disabled, wounded soldiers, sailors, airmen from Walter Reed over here, and the Naval Academy provides midshipmen to skipper. The Naval Academy boats, the CRAB boats, are all out on the water. I think everybody here would agree with me that we all love CRAB. It's a wonderful organization. They have a fantastic mission. They do wonderful things. The real question, I think, is does it need to move from Sandy Point? Is Annapolis the right place for it? I think it is. Sandy Point has access problems. The parking lot fills up. It's on the open part of the bay. Bimby Beach, if the wind is heavy, you can sail there in the harbor close to shore. If the winds are light, you can get out on the bay. It's not too big. It's not too small. It seems to be perfectly sized for CRAB. We've heard a number of people ask about, can it be jointly purposed? There's a reason why we have Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. They do different things, and they don't share the same bases. If you look at the city, the county, you have police, fire, and EMT. They aren't co-located either because they do different things. So it's hard for them to share the same space. I don't see how the rowing and CRAB would necessarily work together either. So thank you. And I hope you'll support the motion.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Anybody else like to come up and speak? All right, Mike. How you doing?
Good evening, Mayor Buckley, member of the City Council. For the record, Mike Panelides, 19 Enclave Court. I've come here tonight to talk about public housing in the city of Annapolis, and I'm encouraging the mayor and the council to restart inspection of public housing units and to set the record straight about what took place during my time as mayor. It's important to treat everybody that lives in the city the same. And from reading the lawsuit that was filed against the city of Annapolis, which is a great overview for those who haven't read it, it gives a lot of context about what happened and what needs to be done going forward. So I wanted to talk about what happened during my time as mayor. Everyone who lives in the city of Annapolis knows the trouble that's been going on with HACA, or the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis. From mismanagement of money to increased crime to lack of safe housing for residents. For decades, the policy of the City of Annapolis was to look the other way, act like they're not citizens of Annapolis, and treat them differently. That changed when I was elected mayor. My transition team recommended that we inspect units, public housing units in the City of Annapolis, and that's what we did. We went door to door and talked to residents, and we told them we were going to come by and do inspections. This was important for several reasons. The first reason was the residents really appreciated it. They thought to themselves, nobody from the city has ever come by and cared about my quality of life and whether our units are inspected or not. The second reason that we had to do it is the conditions were just falling apart. And we knew we were going to face a lawsuit in the city unless we took actions to fix those going forward. There was also a fear campaign that went on. Many people said the city's doing inspections in the city of Annapolis to kick people out. And if they come in and inspect units, you won't be able to live in Annapolis. They're going to shut them all down. But that wasn't the case. Not a single person was kicked out when we did inspections in the city of Annapolis. As I mentioned earlier, it was quite the opposite. People were happy we came by and we actually cared. And just reading some of the comments from the Capitol's news article, they did an excellent job. I mean, when you talk about the mold, the water damage, the lack of fire safety, I mean, it's incredible how bad these conditions have gotten and what the city needs to do to correct it. And one of the things I just want to bring up before we go forward, you know, whenever you read comments online or comments in the paper, people kind of have a certain perception of public housing, not paying rent, the people that live there. And they say, why do they live there for generations? Why is there so much public housing in Annapolis? And those are conversations you can have for another day. But I just want people to think in their mind about the following situation. I want you to think about a 5-year-old girl that has asthma, that's living in a unit with mold and can't breathe, and gets a doctor's note from her doctor, and the housing authority doesn't fix it. I want you to think about a senior citizen that's in a wheelchair that might live in Bloomsbury Square, and their elevators may not work. That's the context I want you to think about what the city's responsibility is when we have to take care of our residents. Also wanted to correct something that was in the Capitol's editorial that wasn't accurate. They basically said we didn't fix any of the violations from HACA. There was 2,498 violations that the city found initially. And every month, myself and mayors of the council were giving an update on what violations had been fixed going forward. And I want to take a second here and just read something that was in the Washington Post. Because these things we're talking about have consequences. It was from the Sunday Washington Post. It says 18 days. That's how long officials at the University of Maryland sat with the knowledge of a highly contagious virus on the campus. 18 days. That's how long they had to think about what might be done to fix the air around them and to obsess, if they wanted to, about fixing the virus, bringing it to their families. 18 days is how long they kept critical information to themselves, knowing students had been entrusted to them were getting sick to the point of hospitalization. And the article is titled, University of Maryland Acted Slowly, It Proved Deadly. Many people know a young woman passed away because the University of Maryland didn't act. Mold and viruses going around. That situation is very real in the city of Annapolis. If they don't have fire detectors and the building burns down, who's going to be held responsible? And I believe the city would be. And so what I'm asking for is I'm asking people to reinstitute inspections in the city of Annapolis. There's always speculation about why did they stop? And I would just ask the mayor directly 2 things. 1, why did you stop inspections in the city of Annapolis? And 2, do you plan to restart them?
I think they stopped under you, Mike, and then we have put money in the budget to restart them, yes.
That is not accurate. They were never stopped under me. They were continuing. We came into an issue with the housing authority, and they weren't letting us into certain properties, but it never stopped under my administration.
When I got here, they weren't going on, so that's all I'm saying. Alderman Payan.
You realize that we're talking about pending litigation here. This is entirely inappropriate. I can't believe that this is going on. Even if you don't talk yourself into being added to the lawsuit, you may be talking us into getting held liable. I'm surprised nobody's spoken up.
Well, if I can make
this is crazy.
Well, if I can make a point to that, Alderman Payon, I emailed the city of Annapolis a week ago, and I copied members of the city council, the city manager, the attorney, and I asked them a simple question. I said, there's an upcoming lawsuit. I talked to the attorney. I said, if I'm called before to testify, will the city give me legal representation?
Well, you've said everything but that so far.
Well,
That's a very simple question, and I think you're a legitimate question, but you're talking all about things that were done or were not done. I mean, you're trying to talk your way into getting sued? I mean, I don't understand this.
The issue is the
I would
city...
have put an end to this conversation a couple of minutes ago, believe me.
I understand, but as a private citizen, I have a right to speak about this and testify for the residents. So I would just say this. Look, many people know I haven't been that critical of the new administration. A lot of things have happened that didn't come forward. When he broke his promise and we had one of the largest tax increases in the city history, I didn't come here. When they said we're going to spend that money to hire a city poet, nobody saw me in these chambers. When we're focusing money on building a beach downtown or a bocce ball court instead of focusing on flooding or the bike lane situation, I did not come forward. But I'm coming here tonight because people's lives are at stake. There's children going to bed right now that are breathing in mold and they're getting sick. And I think the city can take action. And so if the mayor won't take action, I would call on the council members. It only takes 5 of you. And with the snap of a finger, you can demand the city manager comes forward and inspects these units. And I think it's highly inappropriate that we're living in a city where people are living under 2 sets of rules. People that are in public housing and people that aren't. And I would urge the council or 5 members of the council to come forward and take action. And I would just say, I applaud the resolution and that's going forward about making it mandatory to inspect it, but you don't need it. You can go to the city manager right now and direct her to start inspections in Annapolis.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks.
Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come forward and speak? Okay. I declare the public hearing closed. Comments by the general public. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Where are we? The next item on the agenda is the approval of the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar include appointments, AP 9319, the reappointment of Kathy Sulik to the Police and Fire Retirement Commission, AP 9419, appointment of John Wardell to the Retirement Plan Commission, AP 10319, the appointment of Michael Giblin to the Environmental Commission, AP 10419, the appointment of Ann Stevenson to the Environmental Commission. Next is the approval of journal proceedings, CCM 042919, special meeting minutes. And finally is the first readers, O2519, Watershed Restoration Fund, and R2619, rental operating licenses and inspections of Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis properties. That's the end of the consent calendar.
Is there any objections to items on the consent calendar?
Yes. Could you just pull O2519, please?
Okay.
Move approval of the consent calendar as amended.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes.
Alderman Arnett?
Yes.
Alderman Tierney?
Yes. Yes.
Alderman Kayan?
Aye.
Alderman Pindall Charles? Aye. Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Ayes have it. The City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is public hearings, beginning with Charter Amendment, CA 219, City Manager Powers and Duties, for the purpose of removing the Office of Environmental Policy from the supervision of the City Manager and placing the supervision of the Human Resources Office under the City Manager.
Anybody here to speak about that? Yep. No. Okay, Kurt, come forward. State your name and address, please.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Kurt Riegel. I live at 307 Monterey Avenue in West Annapolis. All of us know a little bit about a lot of things and a lot about a very few things, and this happens to be something I know a fair amount about, environmental management, since it's been a good part of my career. It's hard to talk about this particular legislation without also considering the other item on the agenda tonight, because they are joined at the hip. They're two coins, two sides of the same coin, and I guess the very simple points that I just wanted to make again is that I find elements of both of the changes that are proposed attractive, and both of them, in my view, have problems. The mayor's proposal for transferring environmental management responsibilities away, that is creating a policy office, suffers the defect, I believe, in breaking the line of authority and control over environmental management. It has the virtue, though, of preserving operational responsibility in the departments that know the most about the matters that those departments are responsible for. The alternative proposal for the creation of a separate standalone department solves the authority problem, but suffers I believe, the defect in breaking, in attempting to break operational responsibility away from those people that know the most about it. And so as you do, you may already have come to a decision. I haven't counted the votes. Some of you around the table have. But if this is still a live issue and the votes don't clearly fall down one way or another, my personal recommendation would be that you go back to the table, take these two proposals, put them together, and find a way of leaving operational responsibility for environmental protection in the departments that know the most about their operations. However, maintaining an element of supervision and control that keeps everything running. My personal recommendation would be that the environmental director have dual reporting responsibilities, to the mayor for policy and to the city administrator for administration. And so that's finally where I come down. If this is still a live issue, I recommend you go back to the table and try to find something that will work a little bit better. Environment is connected to everything. My experience is when you attempt to segregate environmental responsibilities from their original locus and put them all in one place, it just doesn't work. The challenge to us is to make everybody in city government embrace environmental quality, environmental protection as part of their responsibility, not to offload it to someplace else. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Kurt. Thank you. Any questions? Anyone else present like to speak on CA-2-19? Just like to register into the record this opinion given by Kerry that we copied all the council to put that in. If anybody would like a copy. Okay, so seeing no one come forward, I declare the public hearing on CA-2-19 closed. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is public hearing on Charter Amendment CA-319, Office of Law, for the purpose of establishing an Office of Law.
Anybody would like to come forward and speak on CA-3-19? Okay, I declare the public hearing on CA-3-19 closed. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is public hearing on Charter Amendment CA-419, Economic Development Program, for the purpose of removing administration of the Economic Development Program from the Planning and Zoning Department.
Anybody like to come forward and speak on CA-4-19? I declare the public hearing on CA-4-19 closed. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is a public hearing on Charter Amendment CA-519, the Office of Emergency Management Department, for the purpose of establishing a department known as the Office of Emergency Management.
I see some people out there I thought would speak, but no one. Anyone like to come forward and speak? No? Oh. Alderman Pindell Charles.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor to that piece of legislation.
Okay, cute. That's one's a favorite.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Alderman Rodriguez.
I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor as well, please. It's the Office of Emergency Management, right? Yeah.
Going once, going twice. Okay, I declare the public hearing on CA-5-19 closed. The City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is public hearing on Charter Amendment CA 519, the office, CA 619, Department of the Environment, for the purpose of establishing a department known as the Department of the Environment and generally relating to the Department of the Environment.
Anybody like to come forward on speaking? No one signed up to speak on that. Anybody would like to speak on CA-6-19? Okay, I declare the public hearing on CA-6-19 closed. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is legislative action on second reader, beginning with ordinance 0219, freestanding signs.
Is there a motion to adopt O-2-19 on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Any amendments? Okay, Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are two amendments that were actually proposed by the Planning Commission. They recommended the ordinance favorably generally and had two amendments, and so I sponsored them in an effort as a courtesy to them so that we could have a proper discussion and as a body decide whether we're agreeable with not. I can go through both and I'll indicate how I'm planning on voting for both of these amendments, and I would ask my colleagues to consider the same. Amendment number 1, so this ordinance essentially removes some of the restrictions that you heard about, some of the testimony tonight about the minimum width where a sign can be placed, such as our friend Lisa Ruth from Brewster's and the SOFO president of Jennifer are having a business community sign. There's still several restrictions in terms of the size and the area that signs can occupy. The Planning and Zoning Department had identified these restrictions as outdated and not needed. Amendment number 1 recommends that for all freestanding and multi-tenant signs where illumination is permitted, the illumination be by external means only. I agree with this and think we should support their proposed amendment. Amendment number 2 expresses a preference that all freestanding signs be ground signs, except were found not practicable by the Director of Planning and Zoning. Currently, the legislation, as it stands today, the regulations allow for both pole signs and ground signs, and their ordinance and their sizes and restrictions around that. I believe that should be left to the business owner and the character of the community so that they can best determine whether a pole sign or ground sign fits best. I think regulating or changing it to ground signs only is overly restrictive and a sign of over-regulation. And so with that, I would ask I'm planning on voting no on amendment number 2. So I think if we just take them separately, we could go ahead and vote on that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Pindell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in agreement with Alderman Rodriguez. We've heard from SOFO, which is the South Forest Drive Business Association, which runs the corridor Forest Drive. That is part of Ward 3, as well as Brewster's tonight, a business that is part of SOFO. And I take them at their suggestion that this amendment not be voted favorably upon. So I intend to vote against amendment number 2.
So we're going to move the amendment, right?
Aren't you voting on 1 now?
Okay. So we'll move amendment 1.
Move to consider amendment number 1.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Ayes have it, right? I'm going to move amendment number 2.
Move to consider amendment number 2.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Thanks, Fred.
Oh, sorry, wrong arm.
That one's next.
Okay.
The ordinance as amended?
So, yeah. So is there a motion to move the ordinance as amended?
I do.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
City Attorney, please. On this one. So, City Attorney, you need to read this.
You want me to read it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, once again, pursuant to the City Code Section 216-180, the City Council subsequently substantively amends an ordinance or resolution on which a hearing has been held. Final action shall be postponed until a second hearing is held. The City Council determines by a vote of the majority of its members whether or not amendment is substantive.
All right. Is there a motion to vote on whether the amendment to 02-19 are substantive? No motion, no second. So we don't vote, right?
No.
Okay, thank you. No roll call. Is there a motion to adopt 02-19 on third reader?
So moved.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Yes?
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Kendall Charles?
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. The City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
You don't see this, Kathy. The next item on the agenda is R2219, 2019 Special Election Ward 6.
Is there a motion to adopt R-22-19 on second reader?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Madam City Clerk, please call the roll. Oh, sorry.
I would note
Okay.
we do have Mr. Myers here if anybody has any questions of the election board.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Alderman Savage?
I'm just curious why, because my reading of the code seemed to indicate that if we don't have contested primary election, that there's no primary election. And I know at the time, originally there was a contested election with Kenny Kirby in there, and he withdrew, and I know he withdrew too late, but I'm just wondering why we can't just change our minds and not have because it's going to cost us about $8,000. It's not a huge amount of money, but
Would you like to come forward and clarify that for us? Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. We had asked the same question to the Office of Law here to interpret the city code. And unfortunately, in a circumstance where there is a late certificate of withdrawal from a candidacy that is not acceptable by city code, that means that you pass the deadline, you are still on the ballot. The only option at that point for a candidate who is late on filing their certificate of withdrawal, they are still on the ballot, they are still a candidate, and I've talked to Mr. Kirby about this personally, that if the outcome of the election is such that he still secures the greater number of votes, if it is his continuing desire to not be a candidate, that he would need to file a declination with us at that time. But as a consequence of that late filing of certificate of withdrawal, we have two names on the Democrat side of the ballot, therefore there's still a primary.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I understand, but especially in this case where we have only one precinct, it seems like it's the easiest scenario you could think of for us just to change.
If I might be somewhat, I'm missing the correct adjective right now, but as a three-member election board, believe me, we'd love to not have a primary. This has consumed a number of days of unplanned vacation days from work during the course of the last 2 weeks. No, we're simply bound by code. And the election board has recognized back when we first came on a couple years ago that there are a lot of things in the code we would like to address. Over the many years, the code has distanced itself from both the county and the state. And we recognize there are a lot of areas that we could improve upon. But the time to make those kinds of improvements is not in the middle of what turned out to be an election cycle. Our limits to our authority really were strictly tied to trying to conduct the election, and we did have some latitude by code in regard to some of the timelines where reasonable. You had 3 to 4 weeks for the primary and 3 to 4 weeks for the general, which left us a very short period of time to accommodate all the other statutory things that take place during an election cycle. Ergo, everything got shortened. Those are some things we might want to talk about in terms of where we'd want to amend the code in the future. Should we have another special election cycle, which I hope we don't have between now and the next general. But, you know, there were certain limitations, and this is just one of them. It wasn't an area that we had the liberty to change. I appreciate the question. I would have been pleased to not have a general or a primary.
Well, thank you very much for your long hours and commitment to do. I know there are only 3 of you on the board, so we definitely appreciate your time and effort.
Sure enough. I'll give a plug to the board. This is not part of the question, but I know there's been some concern about the expenses, so I'll add just a little quick comment in that regard. The city will save some money over the course of this general election cycle. Over the course of the last many years, the city has used a CPA firm to review campaign filings. That costs roughly $1,000 to $1,600 for every single campaign reporting cycle. There are 3 during a special election. The Board of Supervisors of Elections is reviewing those on its own during this time. So that's going to save the city probably $4,000 to $5,000 in expense. So I want to make you aware of that as an offset against some of the other state-based expenses that we do incur.
We want to thank you all. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's it. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
All 3 or 4 of us.
We're good, right?
Sure. Mayor Buckley?
Yes?
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is Resolution R2319, Chesapeake Bay Awareness Week.
Is there a motion to adopt R-23-19 on second reader?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think we should change it to the 4th.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
He hates resolutions.
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Ms. City Attorney, please call next item on the agenda.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution R2419, Community Celebration on June 28th, 2019.
Is there a motion to adopt R-24-19 on second reader?
So moved. Oh.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Do you
Alderman Savage?
do you have any further details on the event you could share?
Yeah, so the event's been hosted at Maryland Hall. It is probably modeled a lot on Wendy Winter's event, so it's the same organizational group for that. We will have more details in the next council meeting, but there's no financial commitment for the city, but that's all. Yeah.
who, okay. I mean, who's contributing the funds then?
So it's all volunteer, and so
Okay.
Maryland Hall are donating the space,
Mhm.
the sound, the time. We are finding some sponsors, I think. I'm not exactly sure on that. So. And they approached us about doing this.
Oh, Gavin, if there's...
Alderman Tierney?
Oh, hi. Thank you. If there's a musical group, such as the St. John's Chorale,
Yeah.
who do they contact?
So it would be Reverend, Margaret Davis, yeah. So
Okay.
Maryland Hall, or contact me and go through to Maryland Hall.
Yeah.
And Margaret Davis
This
Hall.
was the thought of doing some kind of like, kind of to offset, if you have rock and roll, to offset with doing some sort of chorale, like
That would be
or-
great.
yeah, like Handel Messiah type kind of stuff. Well, like a chorale, St.
Okay.
John's, yeah, right, yeah.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Buckley?
Yes?
Alderman Arnett?
Aye.
Alderman Terry?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles?
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Okay. Ms. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The next item on the agenda is Resolution R2519, City Ownership of Bemby Beach Marina, Support for Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating's Adaptive Boating Center.
Is there a motion to adopt R-25-19 on second reader?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Well, we need to get the correct name for the marina in. It's not Bemby Beach Marina. It's Fort Williams. So I think if we're going to vote favorably on this, we need to refer to the correct marina.
Okay.
So I would certainly offer an amendment.
Wait a minute, to the what?
To the correct marina. It's not Bemby Beach
Oh,
Marina.
yes.
It's Fort Williams Marina. So
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
I certainly will offer an amendment.
Okay.
A motion to amend the name of the marina to the subject marina.
Okay, do you want to have that motion now?
The second.
Any other discussion?
On the amendment?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Alderman Payon?
Mr. Mayor, I think when it comes to the budget and our spending money, I think I might be the cheapest guy here in the room, generally speaking. And the last thing I would ever want the city to do is get involved in the marina business. If I thought that's what this called for, unlike a number of the emails and texts that I got today, I would never vote for this, but that's simply not the case. I think Mr. Bollinger did an excellent job this evening on clearing things up. I do have some concerns that other boating groups would like similar support from us, and I suppose if we have the opportunity to do that, I think from what I can tell, most of us would do what we could, but this sounds like a win-win to me, and I intend to support it.
Okay.
Can we vote on my
Yep.
amendment?
So let's vote on the Arnett amendment. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So there's a motion to adopt R-25-19 as amended? No?
There's more to
I fully support that, since I talked out of line.
Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things. I want to point out I did, and thank you, Takia, for getting these, or she printed. There's a memo from the Maritime Advisory Board in support of this resolution, unanimous support. I just want to start by giving a little bit of background. I introduced this really to kind of resolve the ownership question, because that's really the key question. And the way it was originally being framed was that the city had no interest in owning the property. So I decided to be proactive and get this introduced and clearly establish our will one way or another. And this resolution does not take the steps needed to actually enact the deal or assume ownership. But as was mentioned earlier, it allows us to submit an application to DNR to see if this is something they're even going to be okay with in terms of utilizing program open space money. So the intention and purpose of this is to really do two things. Simply express our will and resolve that, one, we contribute program open space monies to this effort, and two, that the city own the marina. It's important not only for our own planning, but also the county, because they have a budget coming up they need to decide on at the same time as we do, and they need to know whether or not we are serious about moving forward with this, because if we're not, they'll use their program open space money for other purposes. So again, I'm glad we'll be able to give them an answer one way or another after tonight. Just to give you a few updates, I did meet last week with representatives from DNR and the county, and there were representatives from CRAB there as well, to talk about the project more. And specifically, one of the things we talked about, we had a long discussion, but again, bottom line came down, they won't make a decision until they get the application. But in terms of ownership, I did speak to the county, the rep that was there, and he said that they have no interest in owning the property. Not because of any concerns with owning a marina, but because they have no desire to own more property in the city. Simple as that. The state told me they can't own the property because the program open space money can only be spent by a local jurisdiction, by county or city. So that leaves us. And so I want to be clear, if we don't step up and own this property, the deal's not going to happen. We are the only entity who can own this. So I think the county residents, state residents are really dependent on us to make a decision tonight. To those who say the city has no business owning a marina, let me just say a few things about that. We currently own a lighthouse. We own our own old radio station site, which is the Children's Museum. We own an old oyster packing plant site, McNasby's. We own a solar farm. So we own a lot of things that may not be intuitive for local governments to own, but I think in this case, we're a maritime city, owning a marina seems quite appropriate for us. So I'll just end by saying a few more things that I do think, I think if we want to do everything we can to build One Annapolis, then this is really a part of that. Our seniors, of which Ward 7 probably has the highest concentration, our residents with disabilities, our disadvantaged youth, like the groups that the police department take to the water through CRAB, are a part of that One Annapolis. And perhaps most importantly, this week after Memorial Day, our wounded warriors, our veterans, are part of that One Annapolis that we are all striving for. So again, I want to be clear that a vote against this resolution will cause this deal to fail. And we'll miss this opportunity to act on some of our campaign promises about building that One Annapolis. So let's just stand behind our youth, our seniors, our disabled, and our veterans, and support this resolution and support giving them equal access to our beloved Chesapeake Bay.
Thank you. Alderwoman Pendle-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think any of us need to debate the worthiness of this program. I mean, we've heard it from countless different people in the community, how many people will benefit, and the worthiness I don't think is an issue. What I guess my skittishness is owning another piece of property, and this is a big deal. With this, I think the devil's going to be in the details, what it boils down to. Once we get to the negotiation portion, if this passes, definitely the devil's going to be in the details. And for my comfort level, This has to be homogenized, pasteurized, every kind of I's you want to take it. I's dotted, T's crossed, with also the emphasis on a concerted attempt to partner with other organizations, I won't say necessarily of like mind, but we heard the rowing community. I don't want to disparage the crab folks, but we have to realize that we're looking in any kind of situation in the city, we're looking at maximizing the benefit. Now, they've obviously have maximized in many ways the number of persons that enjoy this program, but we're looking for total maximization. What I heard tonight I had not really heard before are the different events that could bring revenue to our city, whether it's hotels, whether it's restaurants and that sort of thing. And I heard that here for the first time tonight, and I was encouraged by that. Like I said, the devil's in the details, and that's what I want to see. But tonight, my intention is to vote for Resolution R2519 with the understanding of what I have outlined here tonight. Strongly, I can't emphasize it enough. Thank you.
Alderman Annette, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concerns are similar to Alderwoman Pendle Charles. To me, this is a resolution saying that we're willing to accept the ownership as a condition, but Mr. Bollinger pointed out in his testimony, this application still has to be made. I think that's the time when we find out all the details. I want to see the agreement. Mr. Bollinger said they will run it, maintain it, insure it. We need to know the terms of the lease, the conditions of the lease. And I think in that regard, the city manager was trying to caution us that there's a lot of complexity here, and we are making a commitment to an open space use for this. If it isn't crab, it will have to be some other open space use. I'm convinced that we can find those uses, but I share your concern, Rhonda, that we will commit to this, but there's a lot of details that we still need to have fleshed out. So that's why I will be voting for this also, but I think there's more that we need to learn.
Alderman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you. I share the concern from both of my colleagues. This is just a resolution, so it's not the final contract, and that we will have an opportunity to scrutinize. But what is still gnawing at me is a population of athletes who we are not helping. We're helping one group, we're helping crab, but the rowers, the paddle boarders, all of those organizations deserve some attention also. And so I would hope that, you know, if we move forward with this, we also make a commitment to those other organizations to try to help them be productive and provide services to our residents in kind. Maybe not exactly, but to give them an opportunity to be supported by the city with revenue like we are doing for this group. It's called equity. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the amended Port Williams R-2519? Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, Madam City Clerk, please call the, no?
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley?
I'm voting yes for this, just with the caveat that our city manager just has to give us sound financial advice, and it's us up to us to do what we want to do with her advice, but she has to give us what she believes is the best sound financial advice based on her 30 years experience. Not a personal thing, it's just her job. So thank you, and I vote yes, and we all support this. Thank you.
Alderman Arnett?
I'm voting yes for this no, I'm voting yes.
Alderman Kearney?
Yes.
Alderman Payne?
Aye.
Alderman Peniel Charles?
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks for all your hard work. Thank you. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
There were 2 items outstanding. Do we go to the budget discussion, or should we do 025? Okay. Next item on the agenda is legislation on first reader. That's 02519, Watershed Restoration Fund.
So can I get a motion to adopt that on first reader, please?
So move.
Second.
Okay. Discussion, Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to refer.
What?
Wait. I'd like to refer this to the Environmental Matters Committee and to the Annapolis Environmental Commission for comments and review. And I'm just curious why there was no staff report from the Office of Environmental Policy or Public Works on this legislation.
So I think that Jackie was away the week that it came out. We're trying to get it accelerated because of the, what's the thing that we're bringing out? No discharge zone. So I think it was taken to Public Works and to Planning and Zoning. So it went through them, and then when Jackie came, she gave comments. So she has given comments on it. So.
Okay. Yeah, that was my other question about timing, so thank you. All right.
Alderman Finlayson?
Mayor, I think this should go to finance also.
Yes, we have it going to Economic Matters and Finance.
I just see Economic Matters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion?
Probably should go to rule.
All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, next up is the last thing we put there is Alderman Arnett.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think the staff have already anticipated what I wanted to discuss because Jody asked me some questions before the council meeting. But I did want to take a few moments to talk about the budget process for next Monday. I know the administration has some amendments. Finance Committee offered some amendments, and I know some of my colleagues have offered some amendments. And so I was going to say it would be helpful for all of us to submit any further amendments as soon as possible, because I think we need to see them all and review them before we get to the meeting. But the finance director is way ahead of me. She's planning on getting out a set of these amendments tomorrow, which is even faster than I would have anticipated. So I think that's a good thing to do. One of the amendments that I talked with the finance director about, and I've spoken with many of you about, is this concern of issuing new bond debt. But it's joined with a concern that we not reduce the monies for road surfacing, the $3 million, or the sidewalk repair, the $600,000. So I had a sidebar discussion with the finance director about this last week, and I think it's going to be a problem, because what I had hoped was that we would repurpose money from bonds issued but not already spent to make sure we keep roads and sidewalks at their current level, but not issue new bonds. That could be problematic. And the other option is to keep road surfacing and sidewalk at their current levels by going back to PAYGO, which had been the policy of the council, the past council. And that would mean that we'd have to find the PAYGO monies for this 1.4, whatever it is, million dollars. And that's going to be tricky in a tight budget. So I think that we need to be thinking about that. As I say, several of us have spoken about this. What the finance director asked me is, what's your proposal? To which I responded, I asked you first, but I think it's fair. We do, if we're going to not issue new bonds, but we want to keep the same level of resurfacing and sidewalk repairs, we are going to have to come up with a way to finance that. So I think that's something to be thinking about as we head into next Monday.
Can I get Teresa to give some clarification on it, or Jody?
So Alderman Arnett is correct. You have $3 million in the roadways project. Half of it is bonds and half of it is PAYGO from the Capital Reserve Fund. In the sidewalk project, you have $600,000 and it's all bonds. So again, I'm not certain exactly what your amendment is, Alderman Arnett, but if it's that you fund those two projects with PAYGO instead of bonds, then you need to come up with $2.1 million of operating budget cuts, or you need to raise revenue, which would be taxes. I would also clarify that when we talk about in our financial policies, because I see someone handed them out, that to reduce the reliance on long-term debt for recurring capital projects, the city shall strive to increase pay-as-you-go funding until recurring capital projects are funded without debt. Examples of recurring capital projects are road resurfacing, sidewalk repairs, and capital facility improvements. And the reason I say that is there are jurisdictions, our general roadways project, the description is to resurface and reconstruct roads. There are jurisdictions that will have a road resurfacing project funded with PAYGO and a road reconstruction project funded with bonds. We have combined them both into one project. With the condition of our roads, I don't think we're ever just resurfacing. We're always reconstructing by the time we get to it. So it is very appropriate to use bonds for road reconstruction where you're reconstructing a road that lasts decades, and it provides intergenerational equity by doing that, so that the taxpayers of today, out of their pocket, out of today's taxes, aren't paying for a road that benefits people 10, 15, 20 years down the road as well. So just keep that in mind as you consider what you want to do, that sidewalk repairs would be a recurring capital project. Sidewalk construction is not, because I'm not going to construct that sidewalk again until decades from now. And same thing with roads. Road resurfacing would be an example of a recurring capital project. Road reconstruction is not, because I'm not going to reconstruct that road for decades. So keep that in mind as you try and decide your appropriate mix of bonds and PAYGO that you would like to see. And keep in mind, however much bonds you cut that you replace with PAYGO requires a light cut to the operating fund, or it requires an increase in revenue.
Thank you. Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you, Teresa. Just so I'm clear, I think I got them mixed up now. So you're saying road repair, which would probably involve a lot more than just fix, it would be, it would be opening up a can of worms. You see that as better bond funded, or do I have that?
No, you would want road resurfacing and repairs to be PAYGO funded. Road reconstruction and sidewalk construction, it would be just as appropriate to use bonds, if not more appropriate, to provide intergenerational equity. So if we do a road and we're reconstructing a road,
right,
and while we're reconstructing the road, we do the sidewalk like we did on Spa Road. Okay, we're not going to do that again for decades.
Right.
It's perfectly appropriate to issue bonds for that.
Right.
If we are simply resurfacing a road,
Sure.
or we are
milling it or
repairing
something,
a
yeah.
section of sidewalk that's deteriorated, but not
Right.
constructing a whole thing of sidewalk alongside a road, then you would want to use PAYGO for that. So
And the management of that would make more sense because to identify those, you would work with DPW and prioritize them, and then they in turn would be in the capital budget. It would be better management.
You know, we certainly did strive to do as much pay-go as we could afford to do within our revenue constraints.
Thank you.
Alderman Savage.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm also concerned about our bond debt capacity, because if this CIP is passed or adopted, we would have zero debt capacity in the future years under 10%, 11%, and even 12% debt ceiling, except for the last year when we'd have a few million available, if I recall correctly. So zero debt capacity if this passes. I'm really uncomfortable with that because I feel like we need to maximize our debt capacity for any potential parking garage. I'm all for exploring the P3. I hope it works out, but if it doesn't, and we don't know yet if it will, I'd hate to have our hands tied and we won't be able to replace the garage unless we raise our debt ceiling temporarily. Because if we do, it looks like from my analysis, if we do freeze all the new debt, or at least for this fiscal year, next fiscal year, then we should be able to, I think it said, the sheet said 13 million that would be available for debt capacity next year, which is exactly what we would need for the parking garage. So, or less, who knows. But, so part of this is that I think we need to prepare for that and be prudent until we know what we can and can't do with that P3. So in order to do that, we would need to reduce all of our newly proposed bond debt. There's over $3 million of new bond debt. However, that's being offset by 1.5 or so from the energy performance contract. So I guess from what I was told by finance, we had secured bonds for the energy performance contract, but it turns out we didn't need them, so they're repurposing them, which is fine. But even with that credit, we still have about 1.4 or so, I think, of new bond debt. And that's where I got to reading the financial policy, and the policy number 5, which the city manager read, does say we should strive for increasing pay-as-you-go without debt. And this budget seems to really do just the opposite. Because if you look at the projected years for the CIP, in future years, roadways goes to 100% bond funding, sidewalk remains 100% bond funding, and capital facilities stays at 100% bond funding. Because I think that's the other thing listed in this policy, which we adopted in October or November, was it includes capital facility improvements, specifically mentions them, that they're considered recurring capital projects, which means we should be striving to pay for them through PAYGO. So my point is, the CIP seems to go in the opposite direction of this policy. I'm not comfortable with that, and because my basic calculations show that we do seem to have room, so in our budget to find some of those savings to by either freeing up money in the general fund, we could reduce some of the projects being charged to the capital improvement, what am I looking for? The capital, the fund to pay for capital projects. Capital, blanking on it now. It's just the capital fund. And so there are things, we can also just postpone some of these other projects that are within the CIP. So I think there are ways to get about this, but I'd like to hear what the experts on our staff have to say in terms of what kind of scenarios we could look at. So, you know, I'd like to, because also, just to mention, you know, we did, remember, I think you were there, Mr. Mayor, a number of us stood out front of the parking garage how long ago was that? In the campaign, and actually,
I was just a spectator.
and we criticized, I don't know if Mike's still here.
Then you went and voted for it the next day.
Yeah, we criticized Panelides for doing this in terms of paying for routine maintenance using debt, and we specifically referred to the importance of not doing that so we could fund the garage. And so, again, that's another thing we seem to have forgotten. Why is it okay to do what we criticized him for? So I think we at least should be requesting a scenario from our staff, what it would look like. How can we get to this? Would it require a certain, blanket reduction by 10-15% of all our contractual services, at least the ones that have increased? What kind of projects can we put on hold another year? Because again, until we know we can build that garage with a P3, I think it'd be wise for us to do this. So I'd like to move that we request a scenario from staff about what changes we can make to the budget in order to reduce our new bond debt to zero for the FY20 budget.
Do you want to get some clarification from these guys, or you just want to move that?
Well, yeah, sorry. Yeah, we can. I'll withdraw that and wait for clarification.
Do you want to give some clarification on that?
Frankly, I don't really know how to respond. You have put together a budget that is your proposed budget. The council certainly has the authority and the power to amend that as they see fit. I don't know what you, the council members, would want to cut instead of having roads and sidewalks or whatever the new bonds are, or whether it would be your desire to raise taxes, which I doubt. But we've put together a budget. I think you all need to decide what you want to cut if you want to do $2.1 million of bonds or more. I'm sorry, if you don't want to do $2.1 million of bonds or more.
Okay, Alderman Tierney next, sir.
Yeah, just very quickly, I really appreciate my colleagues' concern about the Hillman Garage. I know I've always been very vocal about its status. However, I am very, being sort of a risk manager, I'm very grateful that we will be doing something on the Hillman issue. This is an amendment that we're going to be moving up the $100,000 that was allocated in 2021, moving it up to 2020. $100,000, earmarked for an RFP to these P3 developers, so that we're not just not doing anything in a year. And so just the risk management in me is saying, okay, well, this is great, because now we're going to explore whether this, this is a viable alternative, and it is very appealing to developers, and it could bring in all sorts of different types of ideas in leveraging revenue. And what I have since learned, it's not related, or it doesn't necessarily have to be related to what we do at City Dock. It could be, depends what developers we go out to and what our needs are and how creative we can be with parking and the future use of Hillman. So I think it introduces a lot of good things, and then of course it will not use our bond money. What did I do? But I do applaud your effort in looking at the discipline in this whole bond situation, because I've heard for years how we just our bonding capacity is zilch, and that's really unfortunate, and I thank you for looking into that. But I'm optimistic about what this RFP will bring to the table.
Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do hope that we will move forward with Mr. Neese and the public-private partnership that he is working on. I don't need to remind us that we did raise taxes, and we made an effort to let the community see that we weren't just raising taxes, but we were putting that money to work. In the budget process, we included a list of all of the public works projects that are ongoing in this year. So while I understand the concern about the debt ceiling, we have to find a way not to raise taxes and cut services, because that's what I'm hearing. And I guess I hearken back to the last year when we are just starting to feel the repercussions to cuts from last year. So, you know, while staff is being charged with giving us recommendations, I would just want us to keep in mind that we have got to maintain our services to the residents. And that includes roadways, because that was one of our priorities. So, you know, I know it's a tough place for all of us to be in, and we're gonna have to make some tough decisions. There's no question. But we can't, out of one side of our mouths, say that we are raising taxes, and then out of the other side, we're saying, by the way, we're cutting your services, so.
Alderman Arnett. Oh, sorry, Alderman Savage, sorry. I'm delirious.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's important we try to adhere to our financial policies that we've adopted. And so I'm not asking for a commitment to vote on actually reducing our new bond debt to zero, but because, you know, but I think it's important that we at least get that scenario before us to see if it's possible. I'm not asking again for a commitment that you support that as an amendment. I think we need to talk about that as a group, but if we request it now, I'm hoping we can at least get it at a future council meeting when we're deliberating on the budget to see if it's something that's even possible. As I have not heard a good reason about why we can't comply with this policy. So again, I'd like to make a motion that we request staff to put together a scenario about how we could reduce our new bond debt to zero for fiscal year 2020.
And is there any definition in a time period you want on that?
Well, I mean, I know they have a lot of other obligations, so you know, I think we're probably going to end up having 2 meetings on the budget, so sooner the better, but I don't want to put them in a bind because I know they have other amendments they're working on.
There's only 2 of you, right? Okay, so there's a motion, we've got a second? Second. Oh, Alderwoman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll put my 2 cents worth in if is that pay-go or, no, it's good. I'm agreeing with my colleague in Ward 4. We've raised taxes. We can't, on the other side, say we're going to diminish services. We can't do that. We're in the 11th hour of this budget, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. We're looking at staff.